Chapter 1199. Time flew by and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Dustless had been staying in the Spirit King Palace. There were only 3 people in the big world: Dustless, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru, and Xiaxia Tongsai. Thousand-Hand Maru, I need to catch some hollow souls. I will leave the rest of the tasks to you for the time being, Xiaxia Tongsai said. The development of Hogyoku required a lot of souls, especially the mass production of Hogyoku, which required more souls. Their hasty preparation was not enough. No problem, leave it to me. Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru nodded his white chin lightly. He was quite confident in his work efficiency and gave Xiaxia Tongsai a reassuring look. The latter nodded gently and left. Only Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru was left in the laboratory. She has already left. You can come out even if you dawdle for a long time, my Spirit King. Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at the figure in the dark corner. He said disdainfully and sarcastically, "Your hiding technique is too bad." No, Dustless said a few times in a row. He smiled meaningfully and said, "If I don't expose my aura, Xiaxia Tongsai won't be able to detect it. She will not leave. I'm smart." "So what?" Hearing this, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru glanced at Dustless and then continued the experiment in his hand. He asked coldly, "Is this the reason why you are sneaking around?" Dustless's old face was embarrassed. Peeping at others was indeed a shameful thing. Hee. After experiencing several worlds, Dustless had already been trained to be thick-skinned. He immediately approached Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru and said with a smile, "Don't make it sound so bad. After all, we are nothing." Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru interrupted Dustless directly and sneered ruthlessly, "I will treat it as if I was bitten by a dog in the past. Don't think too much." "What did you say?" Hearing this, Dustless's face turned green. He stared at Shidoro Senju Maru's curvaceous body, and a red light flashed in his eyes as he said, "Then I will continue to bite you now." The Ryatsu in his body vibrated, and a ray of light shot out. The clothes on Shidoro Senju Maru's body burst open, revealing his pure white body. Wuxian suddenly changed his mind. His clear eyes turned red in an instant. When dealing with some women, he could take care of them and melt them with his passionate heart. But when dealing with such a virtuous woman like Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru, he could only crush her dignity. Panting heavily, he originally wanted to resolve the grudge between him and Shidoro Thousand-Hands Maru. Who would have thought that this woman would be so insensible? Since being submissive was useless, he could only continue to use force. He would trample her until she submitted. "Bastard, what are you trying to do?" After staring blankly for a moment, Shidoro Senju Maru shrieked, his tone filled with endless indignation and killing intent. He didn't even think about it as he directly attacked Dustless with a powerful move. Hado number 88, Flying Long Strike Thief Sky-Shaking Thunder Cannon. A thick beam of light shot out. It happened suddenly and without any accident. It blasted Dustless and set off a huge explosion. What kind of monster is this? Seeing the figure that was safe and sound in the flames, Shidoro Senju Maru's hope instantly fell through. Dustless was blasted by the number 88 Hado, and he didn't have any defense, but he himself was completely fine. Only his clothes had some traces of being burned. "What did you do just now?" Dustless, who recovered, asked. He turned his head and looked at the beam of light that flashed behind him. With a straight face he said, "Attacking Spirit King is a big problem, now it's an even bigger crime." Finished speaking, Dustless pounced on Shidoro Senju Maru. "Bastard, let go of me." Shidoro Senju Maru's face was red as she struggled violently. She used all her strength to resist Dustless, but the effect was minimal. In front of absolute strength, her meager strength was not worth mentioning to Dustless. In a short while, she had exhausted all her strength and could only let this crazy hungry wolf in front of her do whatever he wanted. "I like to deal with women like you who don't know what's good for them." Putting down Shidoro Senju Maru, Dustless said with an unruly look, "To deal with people who don't know what's good for them, the method is very simple, and that is to be more violent than them." "You, woo." Before she could finish, Dustless violently sealed Shidoro Senju Maru's big mouth, and his hands moved freely. Until 12 hours later, Dustless walked out of the laboratory with a refreshed look. There are always so many people who overestimate themselves. They know that resistance is useless, but they still struggle. I don't understand. In the rebuilt Spirit King Palace, Dustless shook his head and sighed. It had been many days and he had to return to Soul Society. In the sky above Soul Society, a white light flashed and formed a portal. Dustless, wearing the captain's Haori, stepped out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As if sensing the anomaly, several black figures appeared in the sky. They were the members of the 2nd Division of the Qing Army. Ayaya. Captain Soifeng, you're really loyal. You're so loyal that I want to pass the position of the next captain to you. Looking at the confused Soifeng, Dustless teased. Captain, aren't you in Soul Society? Soifeng frowned and asked. She didn't hear that Dustless left. Oh right, before I left a doppelganger in Soul Society. Dustless looked at Soifeng with interest and smiled. I just came back from Hueco Mundo to gather information. Hueco Mundo? Soifeng was stunned and her expression changed. Are you saying that Aizen Sosuke is going to attack Soul Society? Dustless smiled mysteriously and said softly, You're right, Aizen Sosuke is going to attack us in the next few days. Hurry up and gather the captains for a strategy meeting. Chapter 1200. At this moment in Soul Society's 1st Division, no one spoke, and the atmosphere was particularly oppressive. In the spacious team house, a group of team leaders gathered. Everyone looked at Wu Chen from the corner of their eyes. They didn't understand what was going on and looked at Wu Chen. This guy always refused to attend the team leaders' meeting previously. It was only this time that he took the initiative to request for a meeting. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing everyone's eyes fixed on him, Dustless deliberately coughed twice, raised his voice and said loudly, Everyone, to be honest, the reason why I refused the captain's meeting these days is because I was secretly investigating Sosuke Aizen. I accidentally found that he was secretly making dozens of Aka's Arancars in Hueco Mundo. After the completion, Sosuke Aizen will start a war with us. Wu Chen's words stirred up thousands of ripples. All the captain's spirits were shaken, and their faces were full of astonishment. What kind of concept was dozens of Akas? They could easily fight with Soul Society and not be at a disadvantage, and they could even defeat all the Shinigami. Even if the Aka's Arancars were not as good as captain-level Shinigami, they could easily fight captains, and both sides generally had a 5 win rate. Captain, did you make a mistake? As soon as Dustless finished speaking, someone immediately interrupted him. Mayuri, who was standing at the end, stepped forward and immediately questioned. Recently, the 12th Division has been paying attention to the movements of Hueco Mundo and Hueco Mundo. We didn't see a large group of Akas gathering, and Hueco Mundo shouldn't have that many Akas for Sosuke Aizen. After these words, all the captains nodded in agreement. This old guy. Seeing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, and a flash of displeasure appeared in his eyes. This excuse was of course made up by him. His purpose was to trick the few captains he didn't like into going to Hueco Mundo, and then secretly kill them. Out of sight, out of mind. Captain Ye's words are reasonable. Toshiro met Dustless's gaze and analyzed wisely. Hueco Mundo's strength is obvious. If there really were so many Ajuchas, Aizen would have attacked Soul Society a long time ago. The head captain must have seen Aizen's Shirkai, Mirror Flower, Water Moon, and was tricked by him. It's just a catoptric deflection. How can I be deceived by him? His ability doesn't work on me. Otherwise, our Grim Reaper team would have been wiped out. Dustless immediately retorted. He was rather disgusted by this snobbish brat who was always pointing the spear at him. Everyone. I think the head captain's words make sense. A pleasant voice spoke up for Dustless. Don't forget, Aizen Sosuke killed the captain. If he can create a miracle once, why can't he create a second one? Chapter 1201. Glancing at Zaraki Kenpachi, Dustless sighed in pity. Originally, he had planned to borrow this young man's strength to deal with Aizen, but now that he wanted to die, Dustless naturally couldn't go against his will. Is there anything else you want to say? Dustless looked around and asked. The captains didn't say anything, they just lowered their heads and thought about the current situation. Don't worry, as long as we are united, we will be invincible. Wu Qin, whose face was flushed, raised his arms and shouted, trying to stir up the atmosphere at the scene. This guy is really, sigh. Unohana Retsu didn't know whether to laugh or cry, she could only sigh in her heart. The biggest disaster of Soul Society was Dustless, but now he was shamelessly shouting such nonsense, how abominable. Woman, what do you know? This is called being smart. Dustless seemed to have noticed Unohana Retsu's gaze, he thought disdainfully, if I don't play these people to death, I won't have a good life as a captain. These people jumped out every day to disgust Dustless, just thinking about it made him feel disgusted. Captain, isn't it a bit inappropriate to attack rashly? Shuki Byakuya, who was always silent, asked. After all, the enemy was Aizen Sosuke, a peak existence that could kill a captain. He was unparalleled in intelligence and strength, they might suffer a double loss. TCH, if you are afraid you can withdraw. Zaraki curled his lips and mocked. If you're afraid, I'll deal with the enemies assigned to you. Zaraki Kenpachi's eyes glowed with a burning halo. He was fearless, as if nothing was worth mentioning in front of him. He was extremely arrogant. What did you say? Shuki Byakuya's tone was cold. Obviously he wasn't a kind person. He didn't like this uncouth guy, he even hated him. Zaraki was one of those arrogant people who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Zaraki smiled ferociously. He said even more arrogantly, what I want to say is, even if you are a captain, you have nothing to do with that group of trash. Enough, all of you shut up. Dustless's eyes emitted a cold glint. Seeing that Stone was in a bad situation, he immediately stopped him and said, this is a captain's meeting, not a market for the two of you to chatter endlessly. This matter ends here. In 3 days, follow my orders and attack Hueco Mundo. Dustless and Unohua were in the 4th Division's quarters, or more accurately, on Anohua's bed. Occasionally they would let out languid moans that would make one's face turn red. Since you came back from the Spirit King Palace, does that mean you wiped out Team Zero? Unohua lay quietly in Dustless's embrace. The two of them were completely naked as they hugged each other, feeling the warmth of each other's body. Their hearts were filled with satisfaction. Of course, that stinky monk, Qilin Temple's Tian Shilang, and Heir Mei Wu's Wang Yu, those 3 pedantic people have all been sent to heaven by me. As for Sayako Kurusei and Shura Thousand Hand Maru, I've already tamed them, and they are currently mass-producing Hogyoku for me. Hearing this, Unohua-Lai's gentle face had a faint smile, and the corner of her eyes had a hint of mockery. Her black-bellied personality was completely exposed. What's with that expression? Dustless was instantly speechless. Unohua-Lai gave him a headache and he sighed, I did have that kind of relationship with Shura Thousand Hand Maru as you imagined, but I had no choice. I had to leave the spatial coordinates in her body, or else I would never be able to reach the Spirit King Palace. Don't interrupt me, I don't care about such a small matter. Unohua-Lai glared at Dustless and asked expectantly, how should I address you now? Head Captain, or, is it more appropriate to call you Spirit King? So that's what you're asking. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding, and he looked at Unohua-Lai mockingly and said, that's not important, I'm the invincible little husband. Without giving Unohua-Lai any time to breathe, Dustless pounced on her again like a hungry wolf. The sky of Hueco Mundo was cold, and it was always accompanied by a sandstorm. The sky twisted and a few figures appeared. Katiki Byakuya, Nishiya Toshiro, Zaraki Kenpachi and Unohua-Lai were all there. Did we come to the wrong place? Nishiya Toshiro was disappointed. There were no greater voids within a few dozen kilometers, and there were only low-level voids. They were not even on the same level as Jillian, so they obviously did not come to the Empty Night Palace. No, we didn't come to the wrong place. The location that Lord Qin mentioned is indeed here. Unohua-Lai revealed a creepy smile as she pulled out her Zanpakuto that had not been unsheathed for many years. Her entire temperament changed and she was no longer as gentle as before. Her red eyes made her look like a bloodthirsty executioner, causing others to shiver. The captains were stunned, and they frowned as they stared at Unohua-Lai, who was filled with killing intent. They were not used to this temperament, as if the air they breathed into their lungs was filled with the smell of blood, and it was also filled with fatal danger. Don't you think this is a good place? Even if the most intense battle happens, no one will notice it. This is a place where no one cares about Hueco Mundo. Unohua-Lai, who had completely pulled out her Zanpakuto, was even more shocked. The cold killing intent caused the surrounding temperature to drop by 100 times, and it was filled with a bone-chilling coldness. Also, don't you think this is a good place to bury a group of people? Chapter 1202. Anohua's abnormal behavior naturally attracted everyone's attention. Her murderous look made her look as if she was possessed by a ghost. She gave off an ominous aura. Captain Unohana, are you okay? Higashia Nishiya asked curiously. He walked in front of Unohana Retsu and looked at her. He suddenly felt a sense of unfamiliarity. Being stared at by Unohana Retsu's emotionless eyes, he felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. This is probably the outer area of Hueco Mundo, so our target isn't here. Let's go back. Captain Unohana's reaction is abnormal. What happened? Jushiro Yukitake frowned as he saw the murderous look in Unohana Retsu's eyes. He then saw Captain Nishitani walking next to Unohana Retsu and was shocked. Come back, Captain Nishitani, be careful. Pucci. Before Jushiro Yukitake could finish, the merciless blade pierced through Nishitani's body. There was a long and narrow wound on his right shoulder. It went from top to bottom and almost covered his entire body. The wound was so deep that one could see the white bone underneath. He's not dead? How can a kid be so tough? Or is my zanpakuto rusty because I haven't fought for so many years? Unohana Retsu smiled gently. But in the eyes of these captains, she was scarier than a demon and more ruthless than Aizen Sosuke. Go to hell, Captain Nishitani. Unohana Retsu's unique curved zanpakuto was raised again and slashed at Toshiro Nishitani's head. Clang clang clang. Unohana Retsu's zanpakuto was stopped by someone. In the nick of time, a black shadow blocked the fatal attack for Toshiro Nishitani. Ayaya, Captain Yuki, it seems like you like to meddle in other people's business. It seems that he made the right choice to eliminate you. Unohana Retsu glanced at Yuki Byakuya's expressionless face and smiled. Hado 90 Black. Ha? Did you forget about me? Unohana. 1000. Ryu. Behind him, the ground trembled as Zaraki Kenpachi rushed over while waving his broken zanpakuto full of sawtooth. Every time he took a step, the ground would shake along with his footsteps. My enemy right now is not you, Zaraki. Looking at Zaraki, Unohana Retsu's voice was filled with killing intent. Sensing Zaraki's Ryatsu, she said with disdain, just like before, only your Ryatsu has increased. Everything else is still the same. Stupid. Haha. Unbridled laughter resounded through the deathly silent Hueco Mundo. Zaraki Kenpachi attacked with all his strength. Just as he was about to reach Unohana Retsu, his huge body suddenly stomped on the ground. Ka. Unable to withstand the enormous weight, Zaraki's entire body flew into the air and slashed at Unohana Retsu. Wang Su's flash. The golden sphere whizzed over, and the miserable Zaraki was blown away, lying on the ground with smoke rising from his body. Captain Zaraki. Seeing this, Yukitake Jushiro was shocked. He turned to look at the direction where the flash came from. A young woman with wheat-colored skin and blonde hair was rushing over. Captain Unohana. You also betrayed Soul Society and allied with Hueco Mundo? Yukitake Jushiro looked at the heavily injured Toshiro and Zaraki Kenpachi on the ground with a heavy heart. His heart dropped from the clouds to the depths of hell. It had only been less than 2 minutes since the start of the match, but 2 captains had already been severely injured. It's not that I allied with Hueco Mundo, but that we're all on the same side. Unohana replied casually and gracefully. Unohana Retsu's point of view was quite similar to Dustless's. In her eyes there were only strong and weak. Shinigami and Great Void were not important to her. That's right, we're all on the same side. She had already accepted Dustless's orders and hurried over to ambush the captains. She had rushed over to ambush the captains. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, a few more sonic booms were heard and 3 figures landed on the ground at the same time. That guy is getting lazier and lazier. He actually sent us to such a desolate place. Nero, Bambietta, and the other 2 Quincy masters all revealed their identities and looked at Hueco Mundo with dissatisfaction. Ayaya, you guys are the reinforcements she was talking about, right? All of you are indeed beautiful enough to cause the downfall of a city. Looks like Xianxia is really bad. Unohana Retsu's eyes narrowed into slits. Although she said that, her tone was actually quite jealous. Xianxia? Hearing this name, Yukitake Jushiro couldn't help but frown. He felt that this name was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he scratched his head. I thought that I didn't need to come over to take a look. Who knew that there would be a big problem here? The void exploded and a black figure walked out. Dustless was floating in the sky with his hands behind his back. He quietly looked down at the people fighting below and calmly found his way. Sir Head Captain? When the defeated Shinigami captains saw Dustless appear, their faces flushed red as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They looked at Dustless with bright eyes. Even Zaraki Kenpachi, who was previously knocked out, tried his best to open his eyes and moved closer to Dustless as if he had found his pillar of support. Not good. Seeing that Dustless's eyes were as cold as Unohana Retsu's, Yukitake Jushiro's heart skipped a beat. He cursed in his heart. He couldn't help but associate Xianxia and Dustless with the same person. Chapter 1203. Although he was sick, it didn't mean that he was stupid. Not only that, but he was also very attentive and smart. He also had an extraordinary mind. Is that so? Captain Unohana betrayed us. I am also very sad, Captain Hifani. Looking at the approaching Nishino, Wuchin pretended to be sad. The golden Kusanagi sword appeared in his hand, and its power was endless. It's good that Captain knows. Hearing this, Higashia Toshiro heaved a sigh of relief. With Wu Qin, the strongest fighter, joining the battle, the scales of victory would definitely tilt towards them. Just as he was about to expose Unohana Retsu's crimes, Wu Qin looked at him with a mocking expression. "Get out of the way, Captain Hifani. Captain Hifani and Captain Unohana are partners." Fujiwara Tashiro's anxious reminder came over. Hearing this, Tashiro's face froze. Suddenly he felt a pair of emotionless eyes staring at him. His body instinctively retreated. Puchi. Nishineya Tashiro dodged quickly, but Wu Qin was even faster. It was as if he had teleported and sealed off Nishineya Tashiro's escape route. The sharp edge of Kusanagi Tashiro's Kusanagi sword cut him into pieces. Bang! Dust flew up from the ground and blood soaked the dry desert. A young arm could be clearly seen. "Ha, I missed," Wu Qin was surprised. He looked at Nishiya, who was in pain, and scratched his head embarrassedly. He apologized. "Oh, I'm sorry, Captain Nishiya. I wanted to kill you once and let you die painlessly. Who knew that your reaction speed was so fast that I missed my target? But it doesn't matter. I'll make up for it now." Wu Qin apologized seriously with an apologetic face, but the sly smile on his face made people dare not compliment him. "You bastard." Looking at his bleeding shoulder, Higashi Shiro was in so much pain that he wanted to die. Emerald's eyes were dim and she was severely injured. Her body was on the verge of collapsing. "Leave Hinamori to me, you can die now." He swung the Kusanagi sword again, and the golden blade slashed towards Higashi Shiro's head. Binding down number 61, 6-rod light prison. Just as Dustless was about to decapitate Higashi Shiro, 6 huge light ribbons came from all directions, stopping Dustless's attack. Seizing the opportunity, Raifan Gushido Shiro retreated in a flash, and only then was he able to avoid a great disaster. There are always a lot of reckless people. Dustless turned his head and glanced at the figure who had cast the 6-staff light prison. He said softly, "Captain Shiomu, let me take care of wuxia as well. This way you can die without regrets." Ka. He lifted his foot slightly and twisted his body. Cracks appeared on the 6 huge light ribbons in the blink of an eye. When his right foot landed on the ground, the 6-rod light prison collapsed. Staring at the slender and graceful figures, Dustless's expression was cold. He gave a cold order expressionlessly, "Lie Hellable Niru," looking at the 3 women and then at the remaining 2. Dustless said softly, "And Candace and Bambiita. Kill all the captains except Yukitake Jushuru." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a command, the women pounced on their enemies and launched a fierce pursuit. Suddenly, a cloud of dust rose from the ground, and a figure descended from the sky. Yukitake Jushuru raised his head, and Dustless came into his sight. His cold little face was isolated from the world, and there was no trace of emotion on it. It was as if the smiling captain was just pretending. "You're already the captain, why do you still do this?" Yukitake Jushuru asked with a pale face. He was puzzled by Dustless's actions. It was completely harming others without benefiting himself. He continued, "If you leave us here, you can deal with Aizen Sosuke. Don't make fun of me. Do you think you can deal with Aizen Sosuke with your strength? It's better not to say such nonsense. Besides, you're completely superfluous to me, especially you, Captain Yukitake." Dustless stared at Yukitake Jushuru. Thinking of his identity as the right arm of the Spirit King, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of passion. He knew the benefits of this great tonic very well. Suddenly, Yukitake Jushuru instinctively realized that something was wrong. He asked with an ugly face, "That great void called Nero was the one who came to Soul Society to deceive the captains. Could it be, Kakik? It seems that you're not an idiot. It's rare for you to be enlightened." Dustless laughed, silently admitting that it was his doing. Anyway, this group of people was about to go to heaven together. It was fine to reluctantly tell them the cause and effect of everything. Otherwise they wouldn't even know why they died. Sakura Sajin, Kachiki Byakuya, and Nishitani Tashiro have always been against me. Today's ending is their own fault. As for Zaraki Kenpachi, that idiot jumped in to seek death. I had no choice but to take his life. Among these people, only you are special, Captain Yukitake. Dustless's eyes emitted a fiery light. His voice rose a few decibels. "You're wondering why I'm doing this to you? Let me tell you. From a certain point of view, your body contains the legendary right arm of the Spirit King, which is equivalent to a part of the Spirit King's power in my body. Therefore, how can I just watch and not do anything about it?" His words made Yukitake Jushuru feel like he was struck by lightning. Huff, huff, huff. Gasping for breath, Yukitake Jushuru looked at Dustless as if he had seen a ghost. This was his biggest secret. Even his best friends Shunsui Kayakura and Yamamoto did not know about it. But how did this kid know? Chapter 1204. Jushiro Yukitake was shocked and his eyes widened. His evaluation of Dustless changed again. This guy could see the future. He was like an omniscient and omnipotent existence. Actually, looking straight at Jushiro, Dustless said bluntly, "Within the Godii 13, you gave me a good impression. At least you are better than that cunning old fox Shunsui. Unfortunately, you are indirectly the right arm of the Spirit King, which means you are destined to be my enemy." Jushiro Yukitake did not deny it. "It seems that the incident of dozens of ajuchas was also fabricated by you." "That's right. The number of ajuchas in Hueco Mundo can be counted with one hand, let alone dozens." At this point, Dustless readily admitted everything. After all, they were a group of people who were about to die, so there was no need to fool them. "Don't be so sure. You might be the one who will become the prey." A cold voice came. Dustless was stunned. He turned his head and saw a large number of cherry blossoms floating toward him. There were thousands of them covering the entire sky. So many petals, which means there are thousands of blades. Not bad. Looking at the incoming petals, Wu Qin remained indifferent. He stood quietly in the same spot without moving. The corner of his mouth curled up as he muttered to himself. However, petals are ultimately used for appreciation. He is still too weak to use them for attack. "Humph, I hope you can still be so calm later." Kukumubaya snorted and waved his hand. The number of petals increased sharply, forming an oval ball of petals that wrapped around Dustless. "Everyone, we can't fight for too long. Let's hurry back to Soul Society and reveal this guy's conspiracy to the world." Jushiro Yukitake shouted and tried to retreat into the depths of Hueco Mundo. It seemed that he wanted to report this. Rifa Toshi nodded and dragged his tired body away at full speed. Kuchiki Byakuya also ran away when he saw that Stonehead was in trouble. The most important thing right now was to report to Soul Society. Only Zaraki Kenpachi and Unohana Retsu could continue fighting. "Run. You want to run in front of me? No matter how ignorant you are, you should know when to stop. Your stupidity is giving me a headache." Inside the giant flower ball, there was a disdainful laughter. Then 6 black iron rods shot out from the flower ball and were inserted in 6 different directions. Dustless shouted from within the cherry blossom blade. 6 crimson suns formation. A transparent barrier covered the sky and the earth, and a hexagonal barrier floated out of the water. The surroundings were airtight, and Jushiro Yukitake and the others were sealed within. Seeing this, Fuju and the other captains' faces fell. Back in the Soul Society, Dustless had used this trick to stop Zhuozhen from escaping from the Soul Society. Even though it was as thin as a cicada's wing, its hardness was still vivid in their minds. "It seems that only by killing him will this barrier be automatically removed," Shimubaya said in a deep voice, his cold eyes filled with killing intent. Nishineya Toshiro was no exception. Even though he was already a hidden encyclopedia, he still chose hundreds of thousands of copies. It was impossible for him to just sit around and wait for death. "Once we go, bang, bang, bang." Before he could finish his sentence, Shimubaya suffered a heavy blow. His body shook and swayed until he finally fell to the ground. "Damn expressionless man, your opponent is me." Candace appeared like a ghost and ruthlessly kicked Shimubaya to the ground. At the same time, Bambi Ida attacked Nishineya Toshiro. Even though the ability of the 2 girls was extracted from this sacred script, Dustless had trained them for so many years, and their combat power was still not bad. Seeing Candace and Bambi Ida, Yukitake could no longer calm down. His eyes were filled with cold murderous intent. As a Shinigami, he actually colluded with Quincher. He was even more hateful than Aizen Sosuke. "Ayaya, who are you trying to scare with that look of yours?" Dustless asked calmly. He was very casual and immediately took out a star badge. The moment the fiery red halo appeared, it attracted Yukitake's attention. Not only him but all the captains were the same. Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, the sky full of petals attacked Dustless at the same time. Thousands of blades attacked him at the same time. Bang, bang, bang. Intense spiritual pressure erupted from the inside of the cherry blossoms, and the repulsive force blew the falling petals to the sky. Dustless was perfectly fine inside. "You want to deal with me with just embroidered pillows?" Buzz buzz buzz. The star badge in his hand exuded a destructive throbbing. Looking closely, crimson flames shot out from it. Feeling the special spiritual pressure fluctuation, all the captains' faces changed greatly. Even Zaraki Kenpachi, who was fighting Unohana Retsu, was dumbfounded. This blazing spiritual pressure was unique to Ryujin. Why is the captain's Zanpakuto in your hands? Yucatec gritted his teeth and asked coldly. He was shocked and angry. He had already vaguely guessed something, and a majestic murderous intent erupted from his body. Seeing this, Dustless was too lazy to deny and directly admitted, "Yes, as you imagined, the real culprit who killed Yamamoto is actually me. Of course, I just borrowed Aizen Sosuke's hands." Hearing this, all the captains were dumbstruck as they looked at Wu Qin. They were dumbstruck. Just how many outrageous things had this bastard done? Yucatec's worldview collapsed directly. If he guessed correctly, Aizen Sosuke was just a chess piece Dustless used to take away the captain's Zanpakuto. Chapter 1205. Dustless didn't try to hide anything. The truth was already out in the open. The Ryujin Jaka in his hand explained everything. There was no need for further explanation. The head captain treated you well. Why did you kill him? The head captain has protected the justice of Soul Society for thousands of years. Biting his teeth, Nishinaya Toshiro clenched his fist and asked, "Treated me well? I don't know why he treated me so well. He made me a captain so that he could use my power. You captains are really pitiful. Before the Godii 13 was formed, it was just an assassin group. There's no such thing as justice." Dustless was speechless. He hated this kind of question the most. "Kill him, Bombiata," Dustless ordered softly. He glanced at Nishinaya Toshiro and shifted his gaze to Yucatec Jushiro. Bambi Itama grinned and immediately attacked Higashia Toshiro with a smirk on his face. "How did you know that I have the right arm of the Soul King in my body?" Forcibly suppressing his shock and anger, Yucatec Jushiro asked in a hoarse voice with a touch of coldness. "Something is wrong." At this moment, Dustless noticed Yucatec Jushiro's abnormality. His body was wrapped with strange black runes, looking quite mysterious and sacred. What Dustless was most concerned about was that this mysterious black power was left on the ground in a liquid form. He suddenly remembered that the Soul King's power absorbed by the Soul King Palace was of the same origin as the power overflowing from Yucatec Jushiro's body. "Is this the power of the Soul King's right arm hidden in your body?" Dustless was indifferent. He instantly understood Yucatec Jushiro's intention. He immediately sneered, "You want to use the power of the Soul King to deal with me? Too naive, Yucatec. As a Soul King, do you think I will be defeated by these scattered powers?" Dustless snorted. His current identity was a Soul King. These powers wouldn't hurt him. How is this possible? The Black Soul King's flow avoided Dustless's body. It didn't even attack Daishu beside him. Even Quincy didn't attack. It attacked. How is this possible? I clearly released the power of the Spirit King's right arm to attack the few of you. How could? The surging power of the Spirit King could only endlessly chase after the Grim Reaper. Whether it was Unohana Retsu, Rifanya East Shiro, Zaraki Kenpachi, or Byakuya, the Spirit King Torrent was only chasing after the Grim Reaper. On the other hand, Dustless and Hellable, as well as Candace and Bambietta, who were Quincy, were all fine and were completely ignored by the Psionic King Torrent. Jiejie, eerie laughter came from Dustless's throat. That eerie laughter made people feel as if they were sitting on pins and needles. Hearing that laughter, the dark clouds in Yucatec Jushiro's heart became even denser. "It seems that you should know what the reason is." Fujitake Jushiro questioned as his gaze fell on Wuqin. He had released the power of the great deity One-Eyed, Spirit King's right arm. His goal was to deal with Dustless. This was also his only trump card. But who would have thought that the Spirit King Torrent would only fight the Death God? Yucatec Jushiro? You are really smart all your life but stupid this time. Do you still need me to say such a simple question? Glancing at the sluggish Yucatec Jushiro with contempt, Dustless sneered. "It seems that I don't need to do anything. Byakuya and the others will be crushed by the Spirit King Torrent. Candace, tell him why the Spirit King Torrent is chasing after the Grim Reaper and ignoring us." Dustless ordered Candace to perfunctorily answer Yucatec Jushiro, while he looked at the captains who were being chased by the Spirit King Torrent with interest. "The greatest enemy of the Spirit King is not Quincy or Hollow, but you, the Grim Reaper." His words made Yucatec Jushiro feel as if he was struck by lightning. His eyes were dim and blank and he immediately refuted fiercely. "Impossible, One-Eyed Spirit King's right arm great deity would not be so. I have already told you before that the Godii 13 was an assassin group 1,000 years ago. They can do anything. Don't think that the Godii 13 is so honorable. I can tell you clearly that the current Spirit King Torrent is the Spirit King's revenge against the Grim Reaper. Dustless recalled that Yawach once said that the person who sealed the Spirit King was the Grim Reaper of the Soul Society. It was normal for him to vent his dissatisfaction. You can't control the power of the Spirit King's right arm, so leave it to me. Dustless leaned on epicadventure with shining eyes. As for the captains, they would be crushed into pieces by the Spirit King torrent sooner or later. Pucci. With a sneer, he tore the clothes in front of him, revealing a pitch-black pearl. An even denser Spirit King torrent slowly overflowed from its master. Like epicadventure, the Spirit King torrent's power was also uncontrollably chasing after the Grim Reaper. Let me deal with you first. Dustless secretly decided. He forcibly reversed the Spirit King torrent's trajectory and controlled it to rush towards epicadventure. Hateful, epicadventure's face was ashen. He was shocked to find that his body was melting like ice. It was gradually being dissolved by the same Spirit King torrent, and his body slowly disappeared. What this meant was self-evident. Dustless also had the Spirit King torrent in his body, and it was much denser than epicadventure's. It was so dense that it could easily devour him. After a while, epicadventure's body gradually collapsed, turning into a pool of dark Spirit King torrent. It immediately retreated back into the black ball in Dustless's chest. After devouring epicadventure, my power has indeed increased. The next task is the Spirit King's left arm and the heart of the Spirit King. Chapter 1206. Dustless chuckled, his killing intent surging. Every bit of his strength was built on the lives of others, just like epicadventure, who was directly devoured by the sphere inside his body. Without any power to retaliate, he was mercilessly crushed like an ant. This thing is really dangerous. Xuanhuan retreated to Dustless's side and patted her chest in relief. She was also stunned by the power of the Soul King. Without a doubt, she had always thought that the Soul King was the guardian of the Death God. She never thought that it would only attack the Death God. Even the Death God's natural enemy, Hollow, was left to the side. This is also the reason why Yawach hates the Death God. The existence of the Soul King is a disgrace to him, so he did not hesitate to fight the Death God until he destroyed it. Xuanhuan nodded in agreement. Putting herself in the Death God's shoes, if she was chopped into a human stick for no reason, she would also be furious and want to destroy the other party. Let's go. They are fated to be crushed by the Soul King avalanche. I don't need to control it, this is the will of the Soul King himself. Dustless was very calm after telling the girls that there was no need to chase. In any case, the surroundings were already sealed by the 6 Crimson Yang formation, so these captains had nowhere to run. They could only be consumed by Hollow. But then again, this Soul King avalanche is really not ordinary. Xuanhuan's eyes flashed as she sighed. The attacks of these captains were completely useless against the Soul King avalanche. Any attack would be crushed in the end. It was as if it was limitless. Even if I die, I will drag you all down with me. Unable to bear the burden, Nishia Tashiro's face revealed an ominous glint as he glared at Dustless and the girls beside him like a dying beast. Ayaya, Captain Nishia, the Death God is loyal to the Soul King. What's wrong with asking you to die for him? Wu Chen asked with a smile and a teasing tone. I'm your Lord Spirit King now. Can't you die for me? You keep saying that you are loyal to me. Don't talk nonsense. Rifanu roared. His emerald eyes emitted a cold light, and the spiritual pressure in his body erupted. He was going to fight to the death. Are you going to defuse it? Seeing this, Dustless smirked and took out a special star badge. Just as he was about to throw it to Candace and Bambietta, the cherry blossoms that filled the sky attacked. Get out of the way. That's Kumu Baya's Zanpakuto ability. It's very dangerous. Those cherry blossoms are blades. Xuanhuan Lai shouted as she retreated in a flash, creating some distance between herself and the cherry blossoms in the sky. The only one who stood still was Dustless. Looks like it has backfired. These guys have been driven to desperation. Xuanhuan said darkly. Toshiro, Zaraki Kenpachi, and Byakuya seemed to have realized that their time was up. They all charged at Dustless at the same time. Ka. The cherry blossoms in the sky cut Dustless's body, but there was no substantial progress. The effect was so small that it was negligible. Dustless just stood there quietly, but the cherry blossom's blades could not hurt him at all. What ability is that? Byakuya said with an ugly expression. Dustless was silently mocking him. You guys, looking down at Byakuya and the others, Dustless's eyes were as cold as knives. Boom boom boom. Strong vibrations erupted from Dustless's body. It was as terrifying as a flash flood. The ground trembled as cracks extended in all directions. The scene was extremely shocking. Not only the ground, the sky, and even the entire Hueco Mundo were shaking violently. What kind of move is so terrifying? Byakuya and the others exclaimed. Especially Byakuya, who was the most conflicted. Our moves are ineffective against him. He can block them with his strange ability. Ability? Hearing this, Dustless sneered and shook his head. I didn't use any ability. This is the strength of my Spirit King Devour. Your attacks won't have any effect on me. Impossible. Toshiro Hifanya and Byakuya roared at the same time. They ignored the erosion of the Spirit King collapse and used all their strength to erupt the last of their spiritual pressure. It looks like you're going to release it. Seeing this, Dustless took out 2 special star badges and handed them to Candace and Bambietta. Thank you, young master. The 2 women were stunned for a moment before thanking him excitedly. They looked at each other and naturally knew what Dustless meant. They hurriedly stepped in front of Byakuya and Toshiro Hifanya. They raised the special star badges towards the 2. Although Byakuya and Toshiro Hifanya were puzzled, they still decisively released their Zanpakuto. Bankai, Senbenzakura Kageyoshi. Bankai, Daiguren Hyarinmaru. A majestic spiritual pressure overflowed from his body and continued to erupt. When Zanpakuto was about to completely release his true form, the rising spiritual pressure stopped erupting. Zanpakuto seemed to be dead without the slightest reaction. On the other hand, the star badges in the hands of Candace and Bambietta were shining brightly. The 2 colors, one blue and one pink, were particularly eye-catching. That is, seeing this, Toshiro Hifanya and Byakuya felt as if they were struck by lightning, their minds stagnated, and they exclaimed at the same time. My Hyarinmaru, Senbenzakura Kageyoshi. Looking at Hyphen Valley's Toshiro and Keiki Byakuya's old faces, Wuchin felt an indescribable comfort in his heart. In the past, these annoying cockroaches used to go against him every day. Now that he had killed them and even took away their bankai, there was nothing else to be happy about. Candace, Bambietta, their last value has been squeezed out, now, they are all annihilated. Chapter 1207. His cold and despairing voice gave everyone goosebumps. His cold and emotionless eyes were isolated from the rest of the world and did not contain any human emotions. He was like a god looking down on thousands of mortals. Ah! Don't forget about me. The violent Ryatsu swept the world, the golden light hit the barrier, and the deadly pressure spread. Everyone looked at the initiator in horror. Haha, you bastards, get out of my way. Using all the strength in his body, he burst out with unparalleled combat power for a short time, and even the Spirit King flowing around Zaraki stopped flowing. The golden Ryatsu erupted from his body, and it turned into a solid skeleton, protecting Zaraki from being eroded. Ayaya, it sounds impressive. Dustless stared at the skeletons covering Zaraki's body with interest and praised. But, the smile on his face suddenly disappeared, and it was replaced by endless haze. Dustless said coldly, 2 Kenfas are absolutely not allowed in the same era, so go to hell, Captain Zaraki. After that, Dustless began to burst out more majestic Ryatsu from his body, and the seal of the 6 Crimson Yang formation cracked. Edo number 88, Flying Dragon Strikes Thief. Extremely thick light beams gushed out, mincing the void space that they passed by, leaving behind obvious cracks. In particular, the piercing sound of the light beams moving at light speed caused one's ears to tremble. Nishia Toshiro's ears were bleeding, and his eardrums were directly shattered. Gulp. Kukimu Baya's iceberg face was full of shock, and he was stunned for a moment. The so-called number 88 Hado, or, after Dustless made the number 88 Hado, its power had undergone a new dimensional change, and it was even more ferocious than the number 96 Hado cremation. Boom boom boom. The light that blotted out the sky was coming toward him, and Zaraki instinctively smelled the smell of death, but his beastly character still urged him to go to the end. Holding the sword with both hands, he raised it high, and a huge golden sword pressure gathered on the Zanpakuto. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. His hands fell to the ground, and Zaraki used all his strength to throw out a slash, trying to tear apart the oncoming cold light. However, his wish was ultimately going to fail. Puchi. The moment the 2 rays of light collided, Zaraki's slash instantly collapsed, annihilating it and sweeping towards Zaraki in an unprecedented manner. Swish, swish. The light soared into the sky as if it wanted to destroy the entire world. As for Zaraki Kenpachi's figure, he had completely disappeared. His spiritual pressure, his body, and his Zanpakuto had all disappeared. They were directly evaporated by the blazing temperature of the 88th Hado. Boom boom boom. A violent explosion resounded through the clouds, and there were actually many fragments falling down. Looking up, the 6 Crimson Yang array had actually been destroyed. Ayaya, I didn't control my strength. This is going to be bad. Dustless said apologetically, causing Xuanhuan and the others to roll their eyes. Retreat, Captain Hefano. Keiki Baya roared and hurriedly urged the dazed Nisan to Shiro. His entire body transformed into a flash of light and disappeared without a trace. Whoosh whoosh. In the blink of an eye, the two disappeared, escaping from the 6 Crimson Yang array through the gap created by Dustless. After devouring the power of Psionic King, the technique of controlling strength seems to have become a lot worse. Dustless whispered to himself, and his sight pierced through thousands of miles in an instant, and the two escaping frantically immediately became close to him. Spiritual technique, bright God gate. The mahogany that fell from the sky smashed the two of them into smithereens in that short period of time. Their bodies were badly mutilated. Time passed and dozens of days passed in a flash. Of the captains who rushed to Hueco Mundo, other than Xuanhuan Retsu who accidentally survived, all the other captains had died. This terrible news caused the entire Soul Society to tremble. And the main culprit, the best scapegoat, was naturally Sosuke Aizen. Dustless and Xuanhuan Retsu had colluded together, and Aizen, who was far away in Lost Nose Palace and knew nothing about it, became the scapegoat for Dustless. Head Captain, we should immediately attack Hueco Mundo. If this continues, we will be left alone sooner or later. Shunsui said with red eyes. You could take Jushiru's death in Hueco Mundo was a great blow to him. If you guys knew that I was the Black Hand, would you turn me into ashes? Dustless smacked his lips and thought to himself. At this moment, the captains were united and everyone was filled with anger. Their hatred for Sosuke Aizen had reached an unprecedented level. Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but feel sorry for Sosuke Aizen. Sosuke Aizen naturally needs to be dealt with. The hatred of the captains must be washed away with Sosuke Aizen's blood. Head Captain, to us. Faced with such a perfect situation, Dustless immediately used the Great Deception technique. Sosuke Aizen was definitely going to be beaten, but there was still Yawatch hiding in the dark that needed to be dealt with. Dustless knew everything about Sosuke Aizen, but he only knew a few words about Yawatch. Even after becoming a Soul King, he knew very little about Yawatch. Head Captain, something big happened in the modern realm. At this moment, a Xing soldier in black suddenly knelt on one knee, looking very nervous and panting like a cow. Dustless frowned. Stand up. Is Sosuke Aizen attacking the modern realm? Chapter 1208. Hearing Dustless's words, the group of captains all exchanged glances, their faces revealing indignant expressions. Preposterous. That Aizen Sosuke was too daring. Have they become so arrogant and unbridled? He just killed several captains of Soul Society and now he dares to attack the modern world. Sui Feng, the captain of the 2nd Division, said angrily. She might be small, but her temper was not to be underestimated. The blue spiritual pressure in her body erupted uncontrollably, almost causing the poor Xing soldier to faint. No, Shinozaki Ichigo from the modern world just sent a message. One of their teammates, the girl called Orihime Inoue, was captured by Aizen Sanasuke's men. The Xing army member who was under the pressure quickly reported, afraid that Soi Fan would accidentally use her spiritual pressure to crush him. Okay, you can go now. Wu Qin glanced at the Xing soldier and opened his mouth. Just as he was about to speak, someone else spoke first. Orihime Inoue? The woman with Shinozaki Ichigo? She seems like an ordinary human. Orihime Inoue has a healing ability and is quite powerful. I heard that she's not inferior to Captain Unohana. It's natural that Aizen Sanasuke values her. Damn it, we can't let Aizen Sanasuke get Orihime Inoue. Otherwise we'll be in even more danger. Aizen Sanasuke is already invincible. If he has an invincible healing ability, we won't be able to do anything. Wu Qin silently listened to the group of captains' discussion, and he couldn't help but wail. This group of idiots were not suitable to be subordinates. Looking around, there were originally more than a dozen captains, but now there were only a few people left. Those who died were cheated to death and those who defected had defected. After counting, only a few people were left. It's just a small healing ability, why would Aizen Sanasuke care about it? This is clearly a plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain, you brainless idiots. Dustless snorted in his heart, full of disdain for these self-righteous captains. However, Sosuke Aizen has made his move. It seems that the final battle is near. Rolling his eyes, Dustless's pupils pulsed with a crimson blood light. It was extremely terrifying. There was no need to stay in this world any longer. He had already obtained the Spirit King's power. Other than the few subordinates of Yawach that he had yet to devour, he had gotten everything he wanted. Naturally, Dustless would not stay and waste his time. Since you've chosen to die, then I'll grant you your wish. After all, we're all colleagues, so I'll save you the trouble of making things difficult for me before you even arrive in hell. Dustless sneered in his heart. His face was full of righteousness as he spoke with passion. Everyone, the day of war with Hueco Mundo is about to arrive. Everyone must be filled with confidence and defeat Sosuke Aizen, this evil man who has brought disaster to the world. Understood, head captain. The Shinigami captains all nodded and promised. Their faces were all red as they secretly cursed Aizen Sosuke. After being suppressed by Aizen Sosuke for so long, they already had resentment in their hearts. They had to vent it. Alright, that's all for today. You can all leave now. After a while, Dustless waved his hand and ended the meeting. His eyes were dim and he looked tired. You're too greedy, Xuanhuan. In the 4th division, Unohana Retsu's tone was filled with dissatisfaction. She said seriously, if it wasn't for your unique body structure, I'm afraid that you would have exploded from the Spirit King's power. Dustless smiled bitterly. He could vaguely see dense blood seeping out of his chest. This was caused by the Spirit King's power. It instinctively repelled Dustless, or rather repelled all Shinigami. It's okay. This kind of small injury is harmless to me. It won't have any effect. Wu Chen gave him a comforting look and smiled brightly. His internal organs could be vaguely seen, and even his beating heart could be seen clearly. Everything was corroded by the Spirit King's power. If it wasn't for Dustless's tough little life, he would have died already. Are you really planning to fight with Aizen Sosuke? Unohana Retsu asked gently as she carefully wiped the blood off Dustless's back with a towel. It's about time to settle everything. Dustless nodded and did not hide anything. Those captains are fighting to be the first to die, so I'll fulfill their wish. Do they really think that Aizen Sosuke is easy to bully? So naive that I can't even bear to look at him. Oh you. Looking at the unhappy Dustless, Unohana Retsu did not know whether to laugh or cry. She suddenly felt that her lover was sometimes very naughty and would throw a tantrum. Actually, I can't wait for those captains to all die. Those annoying flies buzzing around all day long. In reality, they can't even take a single hit from Aizen Sosuke. Now they even dare to act like they're the boss. They deserve to die. Dustless suddenly changed his expression and explained with a smile. Although I don't know where Yawach is hiding, at least one thing is for sure. He needs a large number of souls to recover. Therefore, when we fight with Aizen Sosuke, that old bastard will definitely not be able to hold himself back and come out to collect souls. After all, war is the fastest time for living things to die. Unohana Retsu looked at Dustless's sinister smile with a headache. Somehow, she could feel Yawach's resentment. Chapter 1209. Unohana Retsu was silent. Soul Society's captains considered Sosuke Aizen as their biggest enemy, but Sosuke Aizen himself regarded them as clowns. They're not even cannon fodder in front of Sosuke Aizen. Dustless looked at them with disdain. These captains who saw Sosuke Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu couldn't even take a single hit from him. The gap between them was like heaven and earth. I just hope that with the help of those people's souls I can lure out Yawach behind the scenes. Dustless murmured to himself, lowering his head silently. Boom boom boom. Intense spiritual pressure fluctuations swept across Soul Society. Two violent spiritual pressures collided with each other, causing the sky to creak. This is... Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise. Those who dared to cause trouble near the 4th division were quite bold, and the scale of their spiritual pressure wasn't weak either. It's Bandai and Ice Kawasaki. Damn it, forget it, Retsu. Just as Unohana was about to rush out of the door, Dustless pulled her back and said with a smile, "We've already killed their captain, Zaraki Kenpachi. Soon these two fellows will also suffer. As superiors, we need to be considerate of our subordinates. Let's let those two brats enjoy the rest of their lives." Not only Bandai and Iase Kawasaki's spiritual pressure was restless, even the 6th Division's vice-captain Rinjiase, Rukia, and Hinamori were reminiscing about their dead captains in their own ways. The entire Soul Society was gloomy, without the slightest bit of fighting spirit. The death of the 4 captains was no less a blow to them than being struck by lightning. At the same time, in another direction, there was a fierce quarrel. Get out of my way, don't stop me, I'm going to save my friends. In the modern world, in Urahara Kisuke's underground shop, a young man with orange hair and wearing a Shinigami costume shouted, "No matter who my enemy is, I won't leave Inoue alone." The young man was Shinozaki Ichigo, and he was sweating profusely while holding his Zanpakuto. You said. It seems that this guy is a young man who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Urahara Kisuke turned to Yi, who had turned into a black cat, and said helplessly, "I understand." Yi replied and walked into the room. "With your weak strength, not to mention Sosuke Aizen, even his subordinates aren't someone you can handle. Shinozaki Ichigo. You're too weak." Urahara Kisuke said. Shinozaki Ichigo went silent. Shinozaki Ichigo's Ichigo wasn't a young man. Shinozaki Ichigo lowered his head and clenched his fists. His fingers clenched. He had never felt he was so weak. Kun. Ichigo Yiyama, S Yi. Yik Kunz, of, S Kakaku, S Shino, S was Kiki. Him, his, S Isakat, S is he. Broken. His is it. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Shinozaki Ichigo, who was provoked, roared as he unleashed his Zanpakuto without hesitation and slashed towards 4 Maple Court's Yi. Full of flaws. When he saw this, the pupils of the 4th courtyard's Yi constricted in disdain. He turned around and kicked. Bang bang bang. Kurosaki Ichigo, who was rushing over, suddenly disappeared. Everyone could only see him disappear in an instant. Kakaka. On top of a pile of yellow soil 100 meters away, there was a loud explosion. The miserable Shinozaki Ichigo was stuck in the soil, and he was seeing stars from the kick of the 4 Maple Court. At the same time, in another strange space, compared to the tense atmosphere of the unlucky Kurosaki Ichigo, the atmosphere here was much more relaxed. How do you feel? Is there anything wrong? Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai looked at Dustless expectantly, and their eyes sparkled. There doesn't seem to be anything special. Feeling the waves in his body, Dustless immediately frowned and said, "Could it be that the two of you made a mistake? Don't worry, it's fine. We can take it slow." He revealed a gentle smile, indicating that there was no need for them to worry. Ah. Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai looked at each other, and they could see the astonishment and abnormality in each other's eyes. In their cognition, Dustless had always been a cruel person who would do anything to achieve his goals. Even Shidoro Senjumaru was ready to be violated by Dustless again. Who would have thought that this guy would just laugh it off? On Dustless's chest, a blue sphere was shining, crystal clear like a luminous pearl, very dazzling. This was the Hogyoku that Dustless ordered Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai to develop. Now it had been completed, but the result was disappointing. The Hogyoku in Dustless's body didn't react at all. Maybe you made a mistake in some steps. Dustless said. Urahara Kisuke and Aizen Sosuke also failed. They spent decades or even hundreds of years to complete it. Maybe there was a mistake in the subtle links. Shidoro Senjumaru tapped her chin lightly, but Sayaso Tongsai had a straight face. Obviously she didn't think so. In short, let's take it slow, don't be too hasty. Dustless was relieved. If the two women spent less than a month to make the Hogyoku, it would be too unfair to their peers, Aizen Sosuke and Urahara Kisuke. Chapter 12:10. Hogyoku took a long time to develop. Aizen and Urahara Kisuke were peerless geniuses, but even with their wisdom, it took them a long time to develop Hogyoku. Furthermore, they were all imperfect existences. Let nature take its course. Wu Qin patted the shoulders of the two women, indicating that they didn't have to care about it, but the angry Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru didn't appreciate it. He said with a disgusted face, "Give me your claws, hee." The voice that fell on the edge of his mouth came to an abrupt halt. Shidoro Senjumaru's hair stood on end unconsciously. His entire body stiffened, he shivered and turned his head stiffly. "What's with that look?" Oro Senjumaru was scared. Dustless's green eyes made his soul tremble. He stuttered, "You first? Offending the Spirit King is a big problem." Wu Qin laughed mischievously. With one sentence he had sent Shura Thousand Hand Maru to hell. Wu Chen's policy had always been to forcefully crush this ice-cold woman until she completely surrendered one day. "Miss Oro, aren't you going to leave?" Looking at Zhou Tongxing ambiguously, Wu Chen smiled and teased, "Although most scientists don't have the basic understanding of men and women, it's not good for you to watch us make a baby in such a big way, right?" "Make a baby?" Hearing this, Sayaso Torisei was startled at first. His face was full of doubt. Immediately, he looked at the red face of Shidoro Senju and immediately understood what he meant. He cursed in his heart, shameless. Inside Lasyi Temple. On the throne, Aizen Kisuk looked down at the chaotic Minos Grande. His eyes flashed as he used his god-level deduction ability. Arankars, a magical voice spread quietly, and the restless Arankars suddenly became silent. They all looked at Aizen Kisuk, who was standing on the altar. The war with the Shinigami is imminent. I hope everyone can gather their thoughts and defeat the Shinigami. We are invincible in front of us and the world is under our feet. Aizen Kisuk raised his voice and said. His impassioned tone made everyone's blood boil. Kill all the death gods. Flatten Soul Society. Sweep away the Grim Reapers and eat them all. Seeing this, the corners of Aizen Sosuke's mouth curled into a smug smile. Most people were immersed in the joy of trampling on Soul Society. A bunch of pawns, to think that you can step into heaven. Even if you can really step into heaven with me, it will only be for a short moment. When you fall down, you will be smashed into pieces. Sosuke Aizen smiled and didn't say anything. He just watched the scene quietly. Since these arrogant insects chose to go to hell for him, Aizen naturally wouldn't refuse their good intentions. At this time, Aizen Sosuke frowned. After fusing with Hogyoku, his strength has reached a terrifying level. The entire Hueco Mundo is under his control. He said with interest, seems like someone has already invaded Hueco Mundo. Chapter 12:11. The modern realm had turned into a wasteland with black smoke rising from it. Mere humans had no power to fight back in front of Jillian. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a sharp sound pierced through the air. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked at the blue arrows coming from afar. A cold light flashed by the corner of his mouth. You guys go to Soul Society first. We might have been tricked by Aizen Sosuke. He might have turned around and attacked Soul Society. Unohana Retsu turned around and said. But you, Unohana Retsu frowned and looked at the arrows coming from afar. Be careful. You're still alive after so many years? The heavens must be blind. After seeing who it was, Dustless's expression turned cold. His spiritual pressure surged and a huge cold light shot out. 8063, Thunder Roar Cannon. The beam of light engulfed the heavens and the earth, forming a huge wave of energy that came crashing down, its momentum soaring into the sky. Ka. Before the arrow could touch Wu Qin, it was melted by the heat emitted by the Thunder Roar Cannon, and turned into liquid spirit particles that floated around. Damn it, the heavens are so unfair. You've become stronger again. The white-haired man hovered in the sky. He was obviously higher up in the air and looked down at Dustless. After so many years, you're still as weak as before. Smiling contemptuously, Wu Qin opened his mouth and mocked mercilessly. What? Why are you looking for me now? Are you trying to kill me for revenge? Or do you want to take me down with you? The man was Ishida Yuryu's father, Ishida Ryukshin. Where is Shinji? Ishida Ryukshin suppressed the anger in his heart and asked hoarsely. I can't tell you. Dustless looked up and said indifferently. In fact, he knew that he had sent Candace and Bambietta to look for Shinji Kurosaki, but they didn't get any information in the end. Not even the slightest clue could be found. After so many years, nothing was found. If that's the case, then die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Another wave of arrows flew towards him. Every single one of them was deadly, and almost all of them were aimed at the vital parts of his body. Other than the few of them, it's better for everyone else to die. Seeing this, Dustless didn't even try to defend himself. He allowed the incoming arrow to hit his body and completely ignored it. Against such a weak attack, any move would be useless. Clang, clang, clang. Dustless's skin emitted some sparks as if he had hit steel. This guy. Seeing this, Ishida Ryuzo's eyes widened. He knew that Dustless was a monster. Who would have thought that after not seeing him for a few years, he would evolve into a divine beast? His body was as tough as steel and there was no way he could break it. Oh my, you are indeed a highly skilled doctor. Where is the shoe print on your face? Back then, I spent a lot of effort to leave it behind. Could it be that you used your own medical skills to remove the footprint on your face? It's rare to see a doctor like you who can perform surgery on himself. Dustless laughed without restraint. Even an idiot could tell that he was rubbing salt on the wound, let alone the talented Ishida Ryuzo. You rascal you, Ishida Ryuzo's face darkened. Of course, he could tell that Dustless was implying something. Countless veins popped out from his forehead as if there were worms moving inside. It was very frightening. Who are you trying to impress? Do you think that you can scare me? With a sneer, Dustless disappeared. However, the entire space was filled with his voice. It was as if he was an invisible spirit. Even the sky was filled with his voice. Bastard, where are you? Come at me if you have the guts. Don't hide. Ishida Ryuzo's eyes bulged. It was as if his eyeballs were going to fall out. The blood vessels were clearly visible. He looked left and right to search for Dustless. Your reaction is still too slow. At this moment, an indifferent voice came from the sky again. Found you. You have so many flaws. His eyes flickered. Ishida Ryuzo shot out the arrow in his hand at the fastest speed in his life. It was like a ray of light that hit Dustless. His heart, head, and throat were all hit by an arrow. His organs were also filled with arrows. He was almost killed in one shot. There was no chance of survival. You're dead for sure now, you damned monster. Ishida Ryuzo had excellent eyesight. Naturally, he could see Dustless's condition. His heart was crushed. Even a god would not be able to save him. At the same time, the dark clouds in his heart disappeared. Finally Ishida Ryuzo's smug smile disappeared. He felt a sharp pain in his nerves. He lowered his head in shock. What he saw was a shining golden sword. I really don't know what you are so happy about. After all, we are old friends. I asked you to kill me to vent your anger. Now, not only are you not grateful, you are even glaring at me. What a heartless thing. Dustless said angrily. You be ******. Ishida Ryuzo glared at Dustless. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He stared at Dustless fiercely and raised his trembling hands. It seemed like he wanted to strangle him to death. Resistance before death. Seeing this, Dustless smiled cruelly. The Kusanagi sword in his hand suddenly spun. Kakaka. Ishida Ryuzo's organs were instantly ruptured. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. His abdomen was crushed by the sharpness of the Kusanagi sword. Ishida Ryuzo could feel his life draining away rapidly. He felt that death was close at hand. He even saw a skeleton in black clothes with a scythe in his hand. You can't even withstand a single blow. Shaking his head silently, Dustless pulled out the Kusanagi sword coldly. Ishida Ryuzo was in so much pain that he could not stop it. Chapter 12:12. A look of disdain flashed past Dustless's eyes as he walked past like a gust of wind. Stop right there, you bastard. Ishida Ryushin used the longbow as a support and stood up with great difficulty. He stared at Dustless's back as he clenched his fists so tightly that they were as big as his head. Not dead yet. Dustless turned his head and revealed half of his eyes. Looking at the destroyed heart, he was relieved. So it was just a momentary recovery of consciousness. To be honest, people like you are really strange. You knew that you were going to die, but you still rushed in without hesitation. Tsk, are you an idiot? Ishida Ryushin gritted his teeth in anger. It was Dustless who took everything away from him. Are you unwilling to accept this? Dustless turned his head to look at Ishida Ryushin, who wanted to tear him into pieces. He had seen this kind of look many times and was used to it. Although Ishida Ryushin didn't say anything, Dustless could read the meaning behind his ferocious eyes. I have taken away many things in this world. Strength, power, fame, and status. I have taken away all the things that people yearn for. But, since you have taken away other people's things, you better return them to me. Ishida Ryushin's saliva flew everywhere and his mouth was filled with blood. He directly interrupted Dustless's speech. I'm sorry, I can't do that. You are forcing me to do something I don't want to do. But since we knew each other in the past, I can reluctantly take care of you. Dustless gently pointed his finger and revealed a bright smile. I'll give you a free ticket to the heavenly kingdom. As his voice fell, a black shadowless blade appeared behind Dustless's back. 90 black coffin of the broken Tao. Vicious slashes came from all directions. Ishida Ryushin, who was on the verge of collapse and couldn't even stand properly, was naturally unable to resist. A living person was cut into pieces. The smell of blood assailed their nostrils, but no one cared. Even some Jillian who noticed Dustless's presence stood in a daze and didn't dare to make the slightest move. Looking closely, Jillians were all trembling. Their faces showed a rare touch of fear. They didn't have consciousness. This fear came from the depths of their souls. Next, it's Aizen Sosuke's turn. Looking at the empty seat village that had turned into a broken dam, Wu Qin walked away indifferently. A powerful ripple swept out from his body. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed the entire world. Super Shinra Tensei. Kaka. Even though they were aware of the danger and had retreated, the wandering Jillian still couldn't avoid the tragic fate of being completely annihilated. Kangzucho had also turned into an unprecedentedly large crater. It was as if it had been smashed by a meteorite from outer space. All life forms were ruthlessly obliterated by Dustless. The hidden Uraba is more dangerous than Aizen, but because he wiped out the Stern Ritter, even if he wants to resurrect the Stern Ritter, he will need a lot of souls, so I don't need to say more, you should understand what I mean. This is not an excuse for you to kill those captains. Urahara Kisuk understood and said with a hoarse voice, "It seems that I was naive enough to cooperate with a devil in the guise of the Grim Reaper." Urahara Kisuk laughed bitterly at himself. After a long while, he changed the topic and said sternly, "After a great war, countless creatures will die, and a large number of souls will be produced. It can indeed attract Yawatch to surface, but have you forgotten your identity? You are a captain, not an executioner who has no regard for human life. You watched as the great void ravaged the modern world and soul society without doing anything, which shows that your heart is cold." Urahara Kisuk's Ryatsu was already throbbing in his body. To achieve great things, don't bother about trifles. So what if 2 captains died? Dustless didn't care and said in a carefree tone, "Only when more people die and more souls are produced will Uraba, the cat that smells blood, come out. It's because of this that our cooperation fell apart, and the first person to tear up the agreement was you." Urahara Kisuk didn't back down. He gritted his teeth and said, "Not only that, I will also become your enemy." "Just you? And the props behind you? Even the props made by the Zero Squad can't suppress me, let alone you." Dustless glanced at the props behind Urahara Kisuk and said calmly. Ignoring Dustless's mockery, Urahara Kisuk was full of confidence and replied indifferently, "To borrow a phrase from the modern world, science changes the world." Hearing this, Dustless's shining eyes couldn't help but stagnate, and he secretly cursed Urahara Kisuk for acting recklessly. "Well, it's good to kill a smiling tiger like you. Who knows when you will stab me in the back. Anyway, now that I have Saiso Karusei and shout Oro Thousand Hand Maru, it doesn't matter if I don't have you, Urahara Kisuk, the world will still revolve around me." Dustless felt relieved, and then the Ryatsu all over his body began to rage, turning into a dense attack that swept towards Urahara Kisuk. The whole void was trembling, and the boundless energy tide covered the sky, and the clear sky was as dark as night. Now Dustless, after devouring the Psionic King, had such strength that the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked, and the sun and moon lost their light. This pervert. Seeing this, Urahara Kisuk's pupils shrank, and his old face changed dramatically. He cursed and quickly fled, but sadly the endless energy tide came from all directions, and the whole world seemed to be Urahara Kisuk's enemy and no place was safe. Chapter 12-14. Seeing such a scene, Urahara Kisuk's face turned green, and the Ryatsu fluctuations around him made him shudder. Hado number 91, Thousand Hands Clear Sky Cannon. The sky full of pink light attacked him, and there was no way to escape. There was no space for Urahara Kisuk to escape, and he could only hide in the black hole behind him. Boom boom boom, until the pink light exploded, Urahara Kisuk came out of the black hole with an ugly face. "Yo, are you going to deal with me like this? Hiding here and there? Are you a dog? Manager Urahara." Dustless's tone was sharp, and his face was full of bad intentions, and there was no doubt that this was intentional. "No matter how strong you are, you can't beat this mouth of yours." Urahara Kisuk's face turned cold, and he took out a black hood and put it on his body. Immediately, under Dustless's astonishment, Urahara Kisuk disappeared, and his Ryatsu was completely hidden. Seeing such an inconceivable scene, Dustless could not help but be flabbergasted. Then he blinked his eyes and kept having a feeling that this scene was somewhat familiar. By the way, in the original manga, Aizen and the other 2 seem to have used this kind of cloak to attack Isshin Shiba. Pucci. At this moment, Dustless suddenly felt a sharp pain in his wrist, and a small scar appeared inexplicably. Did Urahara Kisuk cut it? Dustless guessed, looking at the shallow scar. He curled his lips and said disdainfully, "However, this strength is really weak, didn't you eat?" Urahara Kisuk. Bastard, is this guy a grand virtuous? No, even if he is a grand virtuous, his steel skin shouldn't be so hard. Urahara Kisuk looked at the incomplete wound, and his forehead was full of black lines, and he was particularly depressed. He attacked with all his strength, and it caused a negligible skin injury to Dustless. The worst thing was that his zanpakuto was chipped, and the skin of Grand Virtuous was not so hard. However, this was not the most frightening thing. Ka. The Earth of Soul Society did not receive any attack, but a thick fissure that was dozens of kilometers long had appeared out of thin air. That bottomless abyss was like the masterpiece of a god, a dark maw that was impossible to dispel. What's going on? Urahara Kisuk couldn't help but be startled, his face full of astonishment. Dustless looked around and noticed that there was no movement of Urahara Kisuk. He immediately opened his observation haki and put the whole place under his eyes. Even if you blind my eyes, you can't escape the perception of observation haki. Dustless snickered in his heart. A few seconds later, he sensed a shadow pouncing on him from behind, secretly gathering a powerful force. Bang bang bang. The moment the zanpakuto was about to hit Dustless's head, his body suddenly turned around, revealing a cold face and a giant foot. Puchi. Urahara Kisuk's chest was suddenly smashed into a big hole, and blood flowed non-stop. One could vaguely see his ribs as well as various internal organs. Shoo. His body kept flying, and when he was about to hit the mountain in the distance, a figure stopped him. It turned out to be you, Yue-san, thank you. Urahara Kisuk solemnly thanked her, and with a painful expression, he endured the tingling all over his body and asked seriously, "Weren't you in Hueco Mundo? I remember fighting with Shinozaki Ichigo's group." Hearing this, Yue-san of the Four Maple Court's tone stagnated and she didn't know how to answer. Looking at the shocking crack on the ground, a terrifying thought flashed in her heart. The eyes looking at Dustless slowly changed from the original disgust to complex and even with a little awe. I'll make a long story short, the same thing happened to Hueco Mundo and Soul Society. After a tremor, a huge crack appeared. This is definitely not a coincidence. Yue-san of the Four Maple Court was silent, and there was a different meaning in her words. Could it be that, could it be that, Urahara Kisuk, who has always been quick-witted, trembled and was full of horror? Realizing that something was wrong, he quickly asked Yue-san of the Four Maple Court, "Did this happen in the modern world?" "That's right." Yue-san of the Four Maple Court was silent, and after a while he looked at Urahara Kisuk's eyes and nodded heavily. "Could it be that you have become a spirit king?" When mentioning the two words spirit king, Urahara Kisuk's tone obviously stuttered. His head was lowered, and his eyes were dull, as if his soul had been taken away and he had become a walking corpse. "My identity as a spirit king is such a big blow to you? If I knew earlier I would have said my identity." Dustless complained with a look of pity, and was quite disappointed. "How can a person like you become a spirit king?" Urahara Kisuk raised his voice and asked, full of disbelief. Although Urahara Kisuk supported Wu Qin to become the Spirit King when they cooperated in the past, it was just a joke at that time. It went in one ear and out the other, so he didn't care. Who would have thought that this nightmare would come true? "What's so surprising about you?" Pulling off his clothes, Dustless revealed a clean chest, and in the center was obviously inlaid with a black bead. Pointing at it, he said, "This is a Spirit King. The two of us have become one, and I am now the new Spirit King." "Impossible." Urahara Kisuk roared with a somewhat sharp tone. "Don't deceive yourself, Urahara Kisuk. You should know in your heart that the cracks of Soul Society, the modern world, and Hueco Mundo explain everything. The Spirit King is the chisel of all things in the world. If the Spirit King falls, all things will collapse. If the Spirit King is injured, Soul Society, the modern world, and Hueco Mundo will also be injured. In this case, do you still dare to kill me? If I stand still, what can you do to me?" Yi of the Four Maple Court's face gradually became ferocious. In the blink of an eye, she seemed to have turned into a tigress, with violent killing intent accumulating all over her body. Keikibaya and her were best friends. Many of the abilities of the strong were taught by Yi of the Four Maple Court. Naturally, they had an inseparable relationship. It could barely be considered a master-disciple relationship. TSK. You four aristocratic families are the most loyal to the Spirit King. Now you want to betray me? Dustless asked with a smile, but his voice made people shudder. Now I'm the head captain of Soul Society. With an order, your Four Maple Court will be swept into the garbage heap of history. Are you threatening me? Yi of the Four Maple Court was expressionless, but her words made the void instantly cold. Hearing this, Dustless was not moved. His eyes were dead. The threat of Yi of the Four Maple Court was as funny as Jillian threatening Vasto Lord. It was just self-deception. Dustless didn't care about her at all. This is not a threat, but an order. If you resist me, your family will be flattened immediately. I heard that you have a very young brother. If something bad happens to him, the Four Maple Court will have no successor. Dustless said with a smile. The arc raised high was very despicable. Full of evil fun, he said, immediately kill the man behind you, Urahara Kasuk. Otherwise the Four Maple Court. The sinister laughter fell into Urahara Kasuk's ears. It was more terrifying than the devil. You're the most beautiful. Yi of the Four Maple Court rolled his eyes and sneered. The other aristocrats of Soul Society won't let you do whatever you want. You'd better. Dustless suddenly raised his right hand, condensing a golden flash ball. It was very bright and aimed at the distant sky. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The light shot out from his fingertips and went straight to the distant buildings. The destructive light beam disappeared in a flash. Boom boom boom. On the residence of the Four Maple Court, a large number of flames appeared. A huge fireball rose into the sky. All the people who were caught in it were doomed to die tragically. I have a bad habit. I hate people who overestimate themselves the most when they threaten me. In that case, a good thing might turn into a bad thing. Let's talk about the current situation. Dustless sneered eerily. His tone was creepy and frightening. The blood-red light beam made Yi of the Four Maple Court unable to raise a chill. It was as if any of her thoughts would be suppressed. Chapter 12:16. This guy is just scaring me. I must not back down in fear, or the situation will only continue to be unfavorable to me. Four Maple Court Yi insisted indifferently. She stared at Dustless with an unfriendly murderous look on her face. She immediately shouted coldly, now get out of here. If you dare to appear in front of me again, I can tell you clearly that even if the whole world is destroyed, I will drag you down with me. These words were sonorous and forceful, like rolling thunder that lingered in Wuchen's ears and did not disperse for a long time. However, Dustless just smiled and his head suddenly moved forward a little. Oh, you smell a lot better. Could it be that Miss Yi has taken a bath more often? This is really... Without waiting for Dustless's voice to completely fall, a biting cold attack came head-on. Four Maple Court Yi, who couldn't bear it anymore, blasted toward him with a destructive impact. Boom boom boom. The silver wave came head-on, targeting Dustless's vital part. It's impossible for you to injure me with such a weak attack. Dustless shook his head and sighed. He waved gently and a wave of spiritual pressure came out. The whole world suddenly shook. Under the dense golden wave, Four Maple Court Yi's fist wind was easily annihilated. She was as weak as a willow branch and could only go with the flow. You want me to go? This is Soul Society, my territory. Oh no, I have the identity of Spirit King now. Hueco Mundo, the modern world, and Soul Society are all my territory. Four Maple Court Yi was so angry that her teeth were creaking. Frankly speaking, her careless personality was not suitable to come in contact with a cunning person like Dustless. She would only suffer losses. But even if she knew her own problem, looking at this extremely annoying face, Four Maple Court Yi still couldn't help but want to go up and beat him up to vent her anger. It's you guys who should go. Dustless sneered. This guy didn't seem to understand each other's position. The ones who should get out of here should be her and Urahara Kasuk. You have guts. Yi Ichi of the Four Maple Court glared fiercely at Dustless, turned around and walked towards Kasuk Urahara. It seemed that he wanted to help him leave. Stop right there. Seeing this scene, Dustless didn't know why, but a nameless fire splashed in his heart. The moment Four Maple Court's Yi was about to touch Urahara Kasuk, it burned all his reason, and he immediately snorted coldly. I said to let you go. Urahara Kasuk, stay here. Dustless sneered again and again, his killing intent bursting out as he said, he won't kill me? But I want to kill him. For a dangerous person like Urahara Kasuk, Dustless naturally wouldn't let him go. Aizen Sosuke was a poisonous snake hiding in the dark, and Urahara Kasuk was also a hungry wolf that ate people without spitting out the bones. They would either become allies or completely send him to heaven. Yi of the Four Maple Court resolutely stood in front of Urahara Kasuk. I gave you a chance, but you don't know what's good for you. Dustless suddenly turned his head strangely and stared at the Four Maple Court's place. The majestic Ryatsu in his body was like an unstoppable flash flood. Stop right there. Sensing the density of Ryatsu in Dustless's body, Yi of the Four Maple Court's face changed greatly and hurriedly warned, "If you dare to attack the Four Maple Court's family, I will fight you to the death, and it will be forever." Hado number 88, Flying Dragon Strikes Thief. Before Yi of the Four Maple Court's voice fell, the explosion engulfed the entire Four Maple Court's residence. Dustless deliberately avoided the Four Maple Court's residence and only destroyed a small part of it. Since Yi of the Four Maple Court didn't know what's good for him, Dustless naturally wouldn't be merciful. Boom, boom, boom. The former magnificent Four Maple Court's residence turned into a pile of debris, and the Four Maple Court's residence became history. Go to hell. The ferocious Four Maple Court's Yi suddenly rushed over. His body was full of dense flashes, and his strength was enough to easily dismember and smash a 100-ton mountain. "I gave you a chance but you didn't cherish it and now you're angry because you missed it?" Dustless asked flatly. His tone was as if it was a trivial matter not worth mentioning. The hundreds of lives of the Four Maple Court's family were worthless in his eyes. There was no value to be moved. Boom, boom, boom. Dustless was hit by the absolute heavy blow, but what was disappointing was that he didn't have the most basic reaction. He continued to stand in place as if nothing had happened. In front of him was Yi of the Four Maple Court with a dazed face. "The difference between us is too great. You're not enough to be my opponent." After saying that, the silent repulsive force in Dustless's body gushed out, and Yi of the Four Maple Court, who was caught off guard, was suddenly sent flying. Shinra Tensei. A black shadow was simply bounced away, and it disappeared in a flash until it reached the sky hundreds of meters away. Yi of the Four Maple Court barely stabilized his body, and he was shocked to find that the distance between him and Dustless was unreachable. "You're next." With a chuckle full of hostility, Dustless disappeared. It was a simple straight-line movement, but because of the excessive speed, it gave people the illusion of crossing through layers of space. Puchi. Urahara Kisuke suddenly felt an incomparable pain in his abdomen, and a scorching light burned his whole body. He turned his head abruptly and saw Dustless with a deathly still face. The game is over. Chapter 12-17. Urahara Kisuke's vitality drained rapidly, blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and the stinging pain all over his body made it difficult for him to fight. His mind was in a trance. Looking at the face close at hand, Urahara Kisuke smiled bitterly and said self-deprecatingly, "I came full of confidence, but I returned heartlessly in failure. The world is impermanent." Urahara Kisuke sighed with a tone of powerlessness and relief. He was surprised to find that he was relaxed, and he didn't have to live like before. Very tired, very tired, very tired. As a spirit king you should be. The one who overrides all things in the world is called a spirit king. Dustless saw through Urahara Kisuke's inner thoughts in an instant and said coldly, "You want me to serve others? Is there something wrong with your head? As the spirit king, everything in the world should submit to me, and not the other way around." Dustless said coldly, and the Kusanagi sword also turned into light, and the powerless Urahara Kisuke fell into the void. He pointed the tip of his thumb at Urahara Kisuke, and a pink light ball flew out. Hado 54 Waste Flame. Several circular flames swept out, and in the blink of an eye Urahara Kisuke was swallowed. Boom boom boom. The corpse emitted a large flame, and Urahara Kisuke was completely erased. Not even the residue of the corpse was left and he disappeared forever. Kisuke. Seeing such a scene, Four Maple Court's Yi felt as if she was struck by lightning. Looking at the body that disappeared with the wind, she instinctively grabbed towards the sky in despair. "I want to kill you." Four Maple Court's Yi's eyes were red. Her best friend left her, and her heart was in pain as if it was being torn apart by someone's bare hands. "You should thank me," Dustless said with a gentle smile. For Urahara Kisuke, living is a kind of pain. Having a nightmarish enemy torturing and eating his internal organs every day is worse than death. Now that he has stepped into heaven, he should be living very comfortably. For some people, death is also a kind of relief. Instant open. The amazing Ryatsu exploded and Four Maple Court's Yi roared crazily, rolling up a storm. Asking for a snub. Dustless shook his head and a light flashed in his eyes. Divine might. In front of the Four Maple Court's Yi, the void shifted as if he had arrived in the universe. The surrounding space was extremely fragile and was occupied by a giant whirlpool. The suction force was infinitely magnified and the Four Maple Court's Yi was sucked in. "I'm done." Stretching his body, Dustless looked at the devastated Soul Society. The great voids were wreaking havoc in Quiet Soul Society, and the death gods were wailing, but Dustless was indifferent, as if nothing had happened. Ka. The void distorted and a huge crescent-shaped hole appeared. This Ryatsu is... Ayaya, it's finally here, Sosuke Aizen. Dustless looked up and saw a few figures flashing in the dark space. He looked very relaxed as he only needed to take care of these people in front of him. Head Captain, it's great that you're still alive. Aizen Sosuke raised his eyebrows and said with emotion, the Zanpakuto's rebel Shinigami's combat power has greatly decreased. It seems that choosing this time to attack was the right choice, just like what I planned. Just like what you planned? Why are you so proud of yourself, Sosuke Aizen? Dustless looked at the narcissist with disdain and sneered, so, are they part of your plan? Them? Hearing this, Sosuke Aizen frowned and looked at Dustless in confusion. Puchi. Suddenly, a painful howl came from the dark space behind him. Sosuke Aizen turned his head and saw a scene that made him stunned. Hannibal took advantage of the situation to attack Aizen's subordinates and easily ended the lives of several Arancers. Even Stark, who was caught off guard, was cut in half. Okuiora was slightly better. He was vigilant enough. Even though he had lost an arm, it could still grow back. Hannibal, give me an explanation. Sosuke Aizen asked with a hoarse voice. He didn't expect that his most loyal subordinate, who was even more loyal than Okuiora, would be attacked. Look at you, this isn't what you expected. Ignoring Sosuke Aizen's black face, Dustless's laughter was full of ridicule and disdain. Don't you understand? Her libel is one of my people. Damn it. This sentence made Sosuke Aizen very angry. Although he only used Hannibal as a tool, it was inexplicable to be played by a tool. Anyone would be angry. A mere Vastolord dares to betray me? Aizen's eyes were so cold that no one dared to look directly at him. His murderous aura was thick. Pay attention, I'm talking about them, not Hannibal alone. Dustless reminded him in a friendly manner. Who else is there? Aizen Sokiai looked around in surprise. Me too, Captain Aizen. A shadow quickly flew over and stabbed Sosuke Aizen's back with his Zanpakuto. Behind you, Aizen-sama. Seeing this scene, the most loyal dog East Sendai quickly shouted, Ikamaru-jin, you dare to betray Aizen-sama? Puchi. The Zanpakuto's sharp edge cut Sosuke Aizen's stomach open. And because Ikamaru-jin's Zanpakuto had the characteristic of venom, it instantly melted Sosuke Aizen's cells. A big hole was formed in his chest, much bigger than a human's head. You bastards. Sosuke Aizen's eyes were about to burst. He was like an angry lion roaring loudly. However, in Dustless's eyes, it was particularly sad. His fingertips glowed faintly as he was about to completely crush Sosuke Aizen. Chapter 12:18. On Aizen Sosuke's chest, a blue sphere was clearly visible, pulsating with a mysterious luster, very beautiful. The mysterious light was like a black hole, attracting the eyes of humans and making them unable to move away. TSK. What a pity if I cared about you before, but now, forget it. Indifferently glancing at the azure Hogyoku, Wu Chen's heart was extremely calm, without the slightest desire. After swallowing the Spirit King, this kind of thing was dispensable to him, without the slightest attraction. In fact, there was nothing in this world that could move Dustless. You two bastards, I will not let you go. I hate traitors the most in my life. Anyone who betrays me must die. Aizen Sosuke stared fiercely at Haribel and Ikamaru-jin. Finally, his eyes were fixed on Ikamaru-jin with fire in his eyes. You two go install that guy for me. Even though there was a big hole in his abdomen, Aizen Sosuke was still safe and sound. He winked at East Sensei and Okuiora. The implication was that he ordered them to stall Dustless for the time being. Wait for me, traitor. East Sensei glared at Ikamaru-jin and went straight away. Idiot, I changed Ikamaru-jin's memory before, he is now my loyal dog and you, Aizen, changed your mind. You are his enemy. Dustless sneered, looking at Ikamaru-jin's expressionless face. He gave him a don't worry look. Obviously he was saying, have a safe trip. Whoosh whoosh, two sharp whistling sounds came. Dustless looked at them. The speed was as fast as lightning, almost the speed of light, but Dustless could see it clearly. Although East Sensei and Okuiora's strength increased greatly after the Hogyoku's strengthening, they were still average. East Sensei's green eyes stared at Dustless's light after receiving the power of the Hogyoku. He pulled out his Zanpakuto and his Ryatsu surged and whispered, no matter what happened in the past, everything will end here. Puchi. A cold silver light descended from the sky. Before Dong Xianyao could finish his sentence, he was mercilessly sliced into two. You unkillable cockroach, you've been caught by me several times. This time you're finally going to die, Dustless said in disgust. He had killed this eyesore of a bug many times. Now it was finally going to die. Then you can die too. A cold light came from behind. Dustless looked back leisurely, and what he saw was Ulquiorra and his Zampicudo that could cut a mountain. Clang. The cold light crashed into Dustless's hand and was easily caught by him. Ignoring Ulquiorra's stunned gaze, he swung his blade. Chapter 12:19. Aizen's face turned green. He was counting on Ulquiorra and East Senshi to stall for time, but he didn't expect Dustless to be able to defeat him so easily. How is this a battle? He's clearly toying with a child. This guy's dimension is far stronger than mine. Although I fused perfectly with Hogyoku, it's still a mystery whether I can defeat him or not. Sosuke Aizen looked at Dustless, who was slowly walking towards them. His mind was spinning rapidly. He even ignored Jin and Hellable, who were beside him. At the same time, the wound on his abdomen was instantly healed by Hogyoku. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Aizen's Ryatsu erupted from his body as he arrived behind Dustless in an instant and swung his Zampicudo. Clang clang clang, the sound of metal colliding resounded through the endless void. Dustless's body, Aizen felt his arm almost break. This is not a human's head, it's clearly a lump of metal. Are you trying to tickle me with your strength? Dustless touched his forehead and said uninterestedly. He immediately took out the star badge hidden in his chest and a shiny tachi appeared in his hand. You bastard! Aizen's face darkened as he stared at Dustless ferociously. He looked at the fiery red star badge and suddenly felt that something was wrong. This temperature, this special Ryatsu, it seems to be the Ryujin Jaka of Head Captain Yamamoto. Why is it in your hand? Aizen Sosuke's pupils shrank, looking at Dustless's smirk, his heart skipped a beat, suddenly realizing that something was wrong. TSK. Since you've been my dog for so many years, I'll reluctantly tell you the truth. I was the one who took the ability of the head captain's Zampicudo. I was the one who pretended to be the Hogyoku and controlled you. I was also the one who instigated you to kill the head captain. Wu Chen's tone was very casual, but every time he said a word, Aizen's face would turn ugly until it turned into the color of a pig's liver. He didn't expect that the Hogyoku's consciousness was Dustless. He was so angry that he clenched his fists. His whole body was filled with a dangerous aura that could destroy the world. Today either you die or I die. Aizen Sosuke roared, then turned into a cannonball and rushed over. The two were separated by a few hundred meters, but Sosuke Aizen jumped through space to kill him. Zampicudo stabbed Dustless's eyes. Even after obtaining the Hogyoku, he was still afraid of that terrifying dojutsu. Wu Chen opened his eyes slightly and an irregular black flame flashed through his eyes. He murmured, Amaterasu. A small flame was burning in Aizen's abdomen, its heat making people retreat. The black light seemed to come from the depths of hell, and no one dared to underestimate it. Ah! Black fire? Where did it come from? The fire spread all over Aizen's body. He screamed in pain as if he regretted living in this world. He was full of despair for the future. What made Aizen's heart jump was that the fire couldn't be extinguished. TSK. Since you're in so much pain, I'll let you go. I'm such a kind person, I can't bear to see others in pain. Dustless smiled cunningly. The air around him quickly froze. You want to loot a burning house? Aizen, who was wrapped in flames, was shocked and angry. He shouted, You think you can kill me with such a cheap trick? You're underestimating me. Aizen Sosuke, who was wrapped in Amaterasu, released his Ryatsu. Endless energy flowed out of the Hogyoku. Enduring the pain of being burned, Aizen Sosuke sneered, Hole of 96, cremation. Boom boom boom. The azure blue sky turned fiery red. The blade-shaped flame rose from the ground, wanting to tear Dustless apart. Firefly's light. Lowering his head calmly, Wu Chen looked down at the flaming saber light rising from the ground. Wu Chen didn't dodge and his body simply spurted out more blazing Ryatsu. Bankai, remnant flame tachi. The charred tachi is steaming and he calmly stares at the huge flaming tachi. Wu Chen raises the tachi in his hand, and a gust of wind blows out. Everything is over. Remnant flame tachi, north, ashes of heaven and earth. The moment the saber aura came into contact with cremation, it instantly killed it. Everything turned into nothingness. The huge saber body was instantly vaporized by the saber aura. Everything returned to nothingness. Only Aizen, who was in a daze, was left in this vast world. Is this the power of Ryujin Jaka? Yamamoto is called the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years. No, his title has been replaced by this man. Staring at Dustless, Aizen Sosuke smiled slyly. He looked extremely despicable and sinister. Since he couldn't win by fair means, he could only resort to trickery. The winner was king and the loser was a bandit. History was written by the winner, and the process didn't matter. After all, his opponent was a godlike player. Chapter 12:20. Zanka no Tachi's high temperature spread like a tide. The entire Soul Society was like a giant steamer. The abnormal temperature made the water in everyone's body evaporate rapidly. This guy. Aizen Sosuke's face was ashen as he felt the water in his body evaporating rapidly. His face couldn't help collapsing. Aizen Sosuke never dreamed of Dustless's overwhelming spiritual pressure. Why can I devour Hogyoku and this guy can still cheat? Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Aizen Sosuke saw a fiery red shadow pouncing at him and retreated a step. Kakaka. However, this was completely ineffective against Dustless. In an instant, he saw through Aizen Sosuke's nature and circled around him with a tricky force. He raised his sword and swept it down. Boom boom boom, Aizen Sosuke was caught off guard. Faced with Dustless's absolute prediction ability, he could only passively take a beating. All his moves were seen through. Boom. Aizen Sosuke's body splashed with a large amount of fire. The hot and violent spiritual pressure crushed half of his body and burned him until only half was left. Gulp. Aizen Sosuke was like a monster. His body emitted waves of spiritual pressure as a brand new body condensed. Because Dustless was too strong, he felt fear. The power of the Hogyoku was completely activated. Aizen Sosuke completed his first evolution. Boom boom boom. Purple light swept across the world. The spiritual pressure was as dense as water. The entire sky trembled. The spiritual pressure was unprecedentedly violent. Kakaka. At the same time, the sky cracked and a young figure came out. He had orange hair and a firm gaze. Shinozaki Ichigo? You didn't die? After seeing the newcomer, Dustless muttered. He was somewhat surprised. He thought this undying cockroach was killed by the great voids of Hueco Mundo. He didn't expect him to live until now. What a surprise, Shinozaki Ichigo. Aizen Sosuke's spiritual pressure stopped erupting. His appearance was completely different from before. He was wrapped in a white shell that was extremely hard, similar to void steel skin. Just like Dustless back then. Ayaya, it seems to be very powerful. Dustless narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. Obviously, he didn't take Aizen Sosuke seriously. Aizen Sosuke snorted. He could hear Dustless's sarcasm and mockery. When he was about to swing his sword, Shinozaki Ichigo's words angered him. Head captain, leave him to me. Holding the Zanpakuto tightly, Shinozaki Ichigo said with bright eyes. Of course I'd love to. Dustless nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. He looked at Aizen Sosuke with a mocking expression. His old face was full of anger. He was obviously angered by Ichigo's words. What do you mean by leaving it to me? How dare an ant like you be so arrogant? A mere human dares to boast shamelessly? Aizen sneered, but what happened next stunned him. Boom boom boom. Chapter 12:21. Aizen's pupils widened to the largest extent in his life. His dismembered body emitted a special ryatsu that restored his fragmented body. TSK. His vitality is really tenacious. There were some unexpected ripples splashing in his pupils. Wu Qin returned to calmness once again and maintained his tranquility. Why is this guy so strong? I can't accept this. Aizen Sosuke was filled with flames. In his rage, he erupted with explosive power, distorting the space around him and turning it into fragments. He spent so much effort, but in the end he was brutally killed. Dustless's indifference to the common people and the way he looked at Aizen as if he was an ant was a heavy blow to Aizen. Puchi. Aizen clenched his fists so tightly that blood flowed out of his palms. His fingers dug deep into his flesh. A great amount of anger and unwillingness drove his reason. His mind turned upside down as if it was about to explode. Aizen's body was filled with ferocity like a fierce beast. If I can't even defeat this guy, how can I kill the Soul King? How can I kill the Zero Squad? Aizen Sosuke roared in a low and hoarse voice. His tone carried a hint of madness as if he was facing death. Aizen Sosuke, I thought you had high standards, but now I find that I was too naive. You're just an ordinary person. Dustless shook his head with a hopeless expression. What do you mean? Noticing Dustless's strange state, Aizen asked with an ugly expression. In the end, the so-called Spirit King is just a product created by Soul Society, a small character not worth mentioning. Dustless continued, the Soul King is the foundation that stabilizes all living things. If the Soul King collapses, the world will disappear. If the Soul King dies, all living things will be buried with him. If not, it's the opposite. Aizen frowned and asked in a hoarse voice, what do you mean? You don't know? Hearing this, a look of disdain flashed across Dustless's brows. He smiled and said, in other words, killing the Spirit King is equivalent to killing any member of the myriad of living beings. You're no exception. In simpler words, killing the Soul King is the same as killing yourself. You're trying to mislead the public with your lies. Aizen sneered disdainfully. That's why I said you're ignorant. You think you know everything? What are you dreaming about? At the end of the day, you're just a chess piece of mine. Glancing at Aizen Sosuke, Dustless gradually lost interest and said coldly, you have an immortal body, and you can obtain unlimited Ryatsu. It must be from Hogyoku. As long as you destroy it, you will return to a mortal body. The current you still can't withstand a single blow. With a sneer, Dustless turned into a storm and rushed towards Aizen Sosuke. You can't see it? Aizen was shocked. In his eyes, Dustless was teleporting. Aizen even thought that Dustless was using a demon technique to reduce his ability to think. After all, Dustless knows too many demon techniques. Bang bang bang. Without realizing it, a heavy kick landed on Aizen, causing him to spit out blood as he was sent flying by the force of the kick. Kaka kaka. The ground cracked and a giant hole appeared. Aizen Sosuke was covered in blood, and his face was sunken in. He was powerless. In front of Dustless, Aizen Sosuke was like a child who couldn't even withstand a single blow. Their strengths were on completely different levels. Oh, something's wrong. Raising his eyebrows lightly, Dustless closed his eyes and his observation haki extended. He had seen Aizen Sosuke's Kyoka Suka before. No wonder it felt so strange, it turned out to be a disguise. Under the detection of haki, Aizen's body on the ground turned into a Zanpakuto. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Behind him, a sharp aura suddenly attacked. Dust turned his head and saw a black figure approaching. Aizen Sosuke's distorted face was clearly visible, and a black light was pulsing around him. Hado 90, Black Coffin. The floating black luster materialized, forming a dense mass of blades that pierced toward him. Puchi. 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 Aizen Sosuke suffered a fatal injury. His entire body was riddled with holes, hundreds of them each as big as a thumb. He looked extremely gloomy. Kaka kaka. In a trance, Dustless heard the sound of glass breaking. Looking closely, the Hogyoku inlaid on Aizen's chest turned into a pile of fragments. You shouldn't be able to be reborn. With a calm smile, Dustless was relieved. Looking at the dying Sosuke Aizen, Dustless's heart relaxed a lot. This smelly cockroach that couldn't be killed was finally going to fall. Aizen's power comes from the Hogyoku. Once the Hogyoku is destroyed, it means that he is about to completely fall. Let's die more thoroughly. The earth surged and a giant sword handle faintly formed, exuding a blazing temperature and destructive power. Hado 96, One Sword Cremation. Under Dustless's command, fire broke out of the ground and formed a giant sword that covered the sky. Dustless shattered it, and Aizen Sosuke, whose consciousness was already blurred, was hit by the sword. Boom boom boom. After a violent explosion, the blue sky turned crimson, and Aizen's Ryatsu completely disappeared, along with the Hogyoku fragments. Slowly, in the horizon, only Dustless was left standing alone in the sky. Chapter 1222. Spiritual pressure spread throughout Soul Society. When Dustless discovered that Sosuke Aizen had completely fallen, he breathed a sigh of relief and calmly looked for the way. You want to kill me? Dream on. A sneer came out of nowhere, and some minced meat appeared in the sky, then slowly expanded and extended out of Aizen Sonosuke's body. You're the shallow one. I've completely fused with the Hogyoku, and even you can't kill me. I'm immortal, and my super regeneration ability is beyond your knowledge. You're also the shallow one. Even if I'm destroyed to the point where not even the most basic cells are left, I can still reappear and form a new body. Aizen Sonosuke said proudly, and his expression was full of arrogance. At the same time, Aizen Sanasuk evolved again. Instead of one evolution, it was more accurate to say that he evolved 2 or 3 times, because his Ryatsu was 3 or 4 times stronger than before. There was a slit that looked like an eye on his forehead and his face turned black. The skin on his face was torn from the middle and was now on both sides of his black face. There were 3 holes in his upper body, and the Hogyoku was in the top hole. His Zanpakuto was fused with his right hand, and there were 6 huge butterfly wings. Each wing had a skeleton growing out of its spine, and it didn't look like a Shinigami at all. It actually recovered. Looking at the blue sphere Hogyoku, Dustless was a little surprised. The state is not bad. Not only was the form different from before, but even the voice was similar to Daikoku's, and the hoarse voice was full of murderous intent. This seems to be the final form of the Hogyoku. This is the final form? It's not that strong. Hearing this, Dustless's calm eyes rippled. At first he was quite surprised. After all, Aizen Sanasuk and Shinozaki Ichigo fought several times to evolve to this state. But now Dustless was really surprised. Dustless shook his head in disappointment when he sensed Sosuke Aizen's spiritual pressure. It seems that I was right to give up on the Hogyoku. This kind of vulgar item is not suitable for me. He touched the black pearl on his chest. Compared to the power of the Spirit King, the Hogyoku was nothing. The Hogyoku was created from the souls of Shinigami and Hollow, so there was a limit to the number of souls it could absorb. Sosuke Aizen's evolution was also limited, while the power of the Spirit King contained the souls of the entire world. Dustless was intoxicated by the surging waves of spiritual pressure that made him unable to stop himself. Just SOSO? Aizen, who had turned into a great void, curled his lips and said with disdain, "You are just jealous that I stole your Hogyoku. I have already evolved several times. Do you still think you can beat me?" "Really?" Seeing this, Dustless smirked and asked, "Then can you feel my spiritual pressure?" Aizen's face stiffened as he stared at Dustless. Indeed, he couldn't feel Dustless's Ryatsu. Dustless's Ryatsu didn't make any sense. Existences of different dimensions couldn't feel each other's spiritual pressure. That's just a coincidence. You are just using a demon technique. Sosuke Aizen retorted. Demon technique? You're... Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Without giving Dustless a chance to speak, Aizen flapped his wings and instantly crossed 100 meters. His Zanpakuto slashed at Dustless's left side. Sure enough, it's just a temporary realm. You don't even have the most basic reaction. Seeing that Dustless didn't move, Sosuke Aizen increased the strength of his Zanpakuto. He wanted to kill this freak who was blocking the progress of the world. Clang clang clang, intermittent echoes echoed throughout the world. Sosuke Aizen's arm was stinging. He couldn't even hold his Zanpakuto tightly and almost dropped it. What is this guy's head made of, iron? Or is it made of diamonds? No, at my current level, I can even easily shatter a diamond. Aizen's jaw almost dropped. Dustless's right ear was intact. It wasn't damaged at all. On the contrary, Sosuke Aizen's right arm was trembling. Are you tickling me? You're not a baby who sucks on milk. Have you not eaten yet? Use more strength. Wu Qin ordered with a stern face. You bastard, stop looking down on me. His mouth twitching fiercely, Aizen Sosuke's body twitched in anger at Dustless' words, his eyes filled with anger, and a sharp roar reverberated throughout Soul Society. Boom boom boom. Sosuke Aizen flapped his wings and rolled out a storm that swept across Soul Society. The earth was scorched and the sky was like a whirlpool. A giant void flash appeared above Soul Society. The moment it appeared, the entire sky was torn apart, revealing the dark and cold universe. The dark purple light annihilated the sky. The expanding sphere seemed to be able to swallow the universe. The sky of Soul Society was destroyed, revealing the brilliant stars in the depths of the Milky Way. Chapter 1223. Aizen laughed wildly. At this point he didn't expect to kill Spirit King. His heart and mind were filled with an unwavering goal. He wanted to annihilate Dustless completely. He wanted to vaporize all of his cells. Boom boom boom. The aftermath of the void flash was still gradually expanding, and the tyrannical spiritual pressure spread throughout the entire Soul Society. The boundless sky was swallowed up, and in the vast starry sky, only the high-speed spinning void flash was left, as well as Wu Qin, who was standing in the sky. He seems very strong. After a long time he sensed that the energy ball that swallowed the starry skies had thrown out a hurricane that was as cold as a knife. Dustless's unchanging face finally relaxed a little. Are you afraid? This is reasonable. After all, you are also a creature, a living body. It is normal for anyone who is alive to fear the current me. Aizen looked down at Dustless and said in a natural tone, "Fear you? Just you? Who do you think you are?" Pursing his lips, Wu Chen said disdainfully, "Do you know the difference between us? My goal is the universe while your goal is limited to this planet. You want to be a local god. Pedantic, vulgar, childish dream." Aizen rolled his eyes. His murderous intent soared. His great dream was mocked by Dustless as a child's dream. How could his arrogant heart bear it? "Go to hell, you ant who blocks my path to godhood." Aizen let out an earth-shattering roar, and the high-density energy sphere in the void increased by dozens of times. The storm of spiritual pressure threatened to break through Soul Society's defenses, and the entire Soul Society howled in pain. "Disappear immediately, you eyesore of a bug." With that, Aizen threw a giant energy ball at Dustless. Dustless's eyeballs were completely occupied by the energy ball, and a destructive storm swept across the world. It wasn't a void flash that hit Dustless. It was an entire world. "My lovely Soul Society was destroyed by you. I'm a captain. No, I'm a Soul King now. How do you expect me to survive? How do you expect me to explain this to the millions of people?" Wu Chen mumbled to himself with annoyance. He looked at the exaggerated giant void flash. His eyes were still full of ridicule. He didn't look serious at all. Even if the earth collapsed and the sky shook, even if the world was dark and the mountains and rivers were destroyed, Dustless's heart remained calm. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the cold and unwilling roar resounded through the earpiece. Dustless heard the sorrowful cries of the Soul Society, heard the pain of the flowers and trees, and heard the mournful cries of the entire world. The mournful cries made people shudder and their hair stand on end. But when Dustless heard it, he was not moved at all. He did not even have any superfluous expression. His heart remained as calm as an ancient well. "The moment I became a Soul King, I began to ignore life." This is perhaps the biggest difference between a god and other creatures. "No matter how many ants die, I won't be moved or sad," Dustless muttered to himself. He looked up at the void flash. He only thought about Unohana Retsu and the others. He didn't care about the lives of others. "It's time to end the fight between children." The Tensigan rippled, and the surface of his skin flashed with an emerald luster. It wrapped around Dustless's body, and in the blink of an eye, it swallowed him whole. It was the chakra mode of the Tensigan. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, behind him, 6 balls flew to the front, embellished with a mysterious luster. Dustless clenched his fists, and the balls instantly turned into liquid and condensed in his delicate arms. Then he stared straight ahead, and the golden light in his palms flickered. "Let's put an end to all grievances, Aizen," Dustless whispered softly, and the powerful light beam in his hands extended to infinity. It wasn't an exaggeration to describe it as 1,000 miles. 1 meter, 10 meters, 1,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters. The light was boundless and had no end, just like Wu Chen's boundless ambition. However, no one dared to question his power, just like Wu Chen's original body, forever unfathomable. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Kacha. The giant energy ball was cut in half by the golden light. It was as simple as cutting tofu. It couldn't resist at all. Pucci. Aizen himself was the same. Even when he died, he still looked at the light beam that was about to sweep across the universe. Then he looked at Dustless's indifferent face and finally understood. There was a world of difference between a man who only wanted to be a god of a planet and a man who wanted to step on the universe. The two didn't have the slightest similarity. It was as far apart as the difference between the 2 dimensions and the 3 dimensions. In Aizen's world, he wanted to step on all living things and become the only god, while Dustless wanted to step on the universe and become the god of gods. The difference between their realms was too great. They weren't from the same world. That old bastard Yawatch still hasn't come out. I've been waiting for him for a long time for this beautiful script. If he doesn't show up, how can I, the director, endure it? Damn bastard, at least have some influence. He scanned the void, and his irritated gaze passed through Soul Society, extending to Hueco Mundo and the modern world, but he did not find any trace of Yawatch, not even his little brother Mickey. He could not help but curse Yawatch. Yawatch, who was hiding in the dark, was also stunned. The clash between Dustless and Aizen was more intense than any of his previous battles. Even the battle with Yamamoto and Ryu Shigeki wasn't as intense as this. Aizen's ability to destroy the world with a snap of his fingers was enough to make all living beings tremble in fear. However, in front of Dustless he was nothing more than a clown. Chapter 12:24. Yawach had no other choice. He didn't expect Dustless to be so terrifying. His strength was far beyond any of his past enemies. What Yawach couldn't accept the most was that this guy had obtained Yamamoto Ryusai Shigekuni's Zanpakuto. That was something that Yawach himself coveted, and the way he got it made him want to cry. This new head captain. How did he get Yamamoto's Zanpakuto Tachi? Yawach was deeply confused. He was curious and perplexed about how Wuchen had acquired Zanka Huatachi. Jugram, how did that guy get Zanpakuto Tachi? Hearing this, Jugram felt awkward and ashamed. He said apologetically, "Your Majesty, I fought with him before and was unfortunately killed by him. Because of that, he took my star badge, so..." At this point, Jugram lowered his head and looked at Yawach. "I'll let it go this time. Don't disappoint me in the future. There will be no next time, Jugram." Yawach snorted. Perhaps if it was someone else, Yawach would have already killed him. However, Jugram's identity was special. He was the next king of the Wandenreich. At the same time, he was also Yawach's other half. Yawach couldn't afford to kill him. "Your Majesty, then Jugram stopped talking and looked at Yurbach, who was resting with his eyes closed. He also fell silent. All the energy in his body had been drained, and he was extremely tired. "Continue hiding. We don't have the right time now." Yawach waved his hand and said resolutely. When he said that, even he himself felt a little incredulous. It was clearly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but due to the opponent's strength, he had to find such a tongue-twisting excuse. Yawach himself felt aggrieved and unhappy. He had never felt so vexed before. "I thought that Yamamoto Ryusai Shigekuni's death was a good thing. Who would have thought that an even more perverted bastard would appear? He even got the thing I wanted, Zanpakuto Tachi." Some Harbach cursed in their hearts, their resentment rising to the heavens. "Your Majesty." Jugram had naturally noticed Habaka's strange behavior and could only smile bitterly. He felt powerless towards Dustless's sudden rise to power and felt that it was inconceivable. A mere person was able to stop the entire Wanless Empire in their tracks. No one else in the world could achieve such a feat. The only person who could do so was Dustless. That heaven-defying absolute strength had suppressed them to the point where they couldn't breathe. They could only hide and hide like they were now. They were no different from street rats that everyone wanted to kill. Allah, you are not dead yet. Your strength, oh no, I should say that the power of the Hogyoku is not bad." Dustless had a smile on his face. His praise was harsh, making Aizen feel uncomfortable. Aizen stared at him ferociously. His piercing eyes made people shrink back in fear. Looking closely, Sosuke Aizen was still in a dismembered state. "Don't be complacent. No one in this world can end me, not even you." Aizen Sokiai retorted in a sharp voice. A carefree smile appeared on his face, and his twisted old face was full of pride. He looked at Dustless. His face was clean and emotionless, only a hint of pity. "You are just a dog that I used to attract Habak. Since he hasn't come out yet, do you think you have any value in being used?" "I'm sorry, I don't," Dustless said coldly, sending Sosuke Aizen to hell. At the same time, his chakra began to surge, like an ancient dragon that was about to wake up. His aura raged, and the ancient barbaric aura descended. "What's going on?" Sosuke Aizen's face darkened. His unique aura made him feel like he was in the same situation. Especially when Aizen felt an extremely dangerous power coming out of Dustless's body. If he wasn't careful, Aizen would be in trouble. Aizen's body that was torn apart by the Golden Wheel reincarnation explosion healed again. "Ah, I have an immortal body. Even if you destroy my body, you can't. I'll end you now." The black sphere floated into the sky, its boundless gravitational force sweeping across Soul Society. There was no limit to it, and even the fluctuations of power passed through Soul Society, strongly affecting the real world in Hoikomundo. Chibaku Tensei. The gravitational force that destroyed the world showed its ferocity. The earth that hadn't moved for tens of thousands of years cracked, and the bright sky was covered by the black light. It was just a tiny bead, but it had destroyed the entire world. An unusual vibration spread throughout the entire world. Kakaka. A large mountain rose from the ground and floated in the sky, approaching the bead. Even Sosuke Aizen was unable to control himself. "What the hell is this? How is this possible?" Aizen's confident eyes were shaken, and his tone was full of shock. This was the first time he encountered such a strange situation. "You want me to wait for death?" Wishful thinking. With a groan, Sosuke Aizen's Ryatsu began to surge. The Ryatsu melted the floating mountain fragments around him, and he was lucky enough to escape from the gravitational force. Heido 96 Cremation. The ground began to shake and a giant flame sword could be seen clearly. After fusing with Hogyoku, Sosuke Aizen became immortal, and it didn't matter if a part of his body was damaged. Seeing the flame of the broadsword, Wu Qin smiled contemptuously and was extremely calm. Wheel grave, border prison. In the invisible world, several shadows flew out one after another, blocking Sosuke Aizen's attack like an iron wall. Boom boom boom. Cremation's giant blade only extended half of its body before it inexplicably exploded, and molten lava swept out. You mentioned an explosion? What's going on? Sosuke Aizen was stunned and his eyes widened in shock. Cremation didn't even hit Chibaku Tensei, and it inexplicably exploded. How could he not be surprised? It's time to call it a day. Chapter 1225. Dustless didn't know what the others were thinking. Anyway, he had already said what he wanted to say. After arriving at their destination, the other party still couldn't find the other one and wanted to kill him. At that time, Dustless wouldn't give the other party a chance. He would leave all kinds of information along the way. In such a situation, he would directly reveal the coordinates of the two to the other gods and let them bring reinforcements to besiege them. On the other hand, he might be able to fight the other party quickly. Although he didn't need to directly distinguish the winner, he could carefully fight a battle of attrition with the other party and wait for reinforcements to arrive. In this case, it would be a better and more reliable plan. Dustless's plan was as stable as that, but after coming up with it, it still depended on the black-robed man's decision. The black-robed man carefully observed Dustless in front of him. After careful observation, he felt that Dustless didn't seem to be lying. However, he also knew that these words couldn't be taken lightly. It was very likely that there would be a problem. But now he had no other choice. He could only try his best to treat a dead horse as a living horse. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, the black-robed man nodded directly to Dustless. All right, since you've already said so, then I'll fulfill your wish. You'll go with me. The rest of you will stay here and watch over Yido. If Yido shows any abnormal behavior, then you can blame yourself. As long as you're still alive, then it's fine. If I send out a signal, then you can just kill Yido. This time, the black-robed man could be said to have arranged the action clearly. He didn't give the others any chance to survive. In the face of such a situation, Dustless was obviously gnashing his teeth. The black-robed man in front of him said that he believed in him, but secretly, he still didn't trust him. He still left Yido on his side. He probably planned to kill Yido immediately if he found out that Yido had deceived him. Then the black-robed man would personally kill Yido. In the face of such a situation, Yido directly closed his eyes and didn't say anything. He was always thinking about Dustless in his heart, hoping that Dustless would be safe. After all, no one could change Dustless's decision. Moreover, Dustless was determined to do it. Could be said that he was very strong. Dustless also made up his mind at this moment. He absolutely couldn't die in this journey. The black-robed man saw that Dustless didn't have any objections. This time he believed in Dustless even more. Especially in the face of such a situation, he directly narrowed his eyes and nodded slightly. Then he said to Dustless, "In order to prevent you from having the strength to escape midway, I won't release the chains on your body. In such a situation you can continue to bind her. However, I will reduce my strength so that you can do it better. You won't be in so much pain while being chained by him." In such a situation, although Dustless was a little dissatisfied sometimes, he didn't say anything in the end. After all, at this point, it could be said that he had already reached one of his expectations. After that, Dustless planned to set off quickly. After all, if he set off now, he didn't know if he could reach that place. Dustless specifically told the black-robed man that this place was the place where he first appeared. Did Dustless really have some kind of mystery? Could he once again return to the place where the other big tree was located? But no matter what, he could only report this location now. In such a situation, there was no need to say anything more. He hurried along with the black-robed man. There was still a little distance between this place and that place, but for a god, the distance wasn't particularly long. Facing such a situation, Dustless completely remembered what kind of place this was and whose temple this place was. In such a situation, it was possible to know who was cooperating with the black-robed man and who was protecting and indulging the black-robed man in such a situation. Dustless suspected that there was another possibility. The black-robed man was the god in charge of this area. After all, the black-robed man shouldn't have betrayed so blatantly without being discovered. Dustless was more inclined to think that the black-robed man and the god in charge of this place had reached some kind of deal that allowed the black-robed man to exist here safely and not be found by others. Wuxian maintained a certain degree of silence along the way. Even the black-robed man didn't say much. It seemed that he had a close yearning for the destination. He wanted to know what kind of place it was in the middle. Dustless secretly did something along the way. He did it very secretly. Dustless guaranteed that the black-robed man didn't know about it. Otherwise, if the black-robed man knew about it, he would have already found Dustless. Therefore, the black-robed man shouldn't know what kind of signal Dustless left behind to guide others to this place. In such a situation, they soon arrived at this place. Dustless felt the familiar environment and breathed a sigh of relief. He really felt that he hadn't seen these things for a long time. He had been killing enemies on the battlefield for a whole day. In the enemy's base, he hadn't seen these familiar environments for a long time. Now, these familiar environments had changed a little. He estimated that they had already experienced several cycles of reincarnation. After Wuxian arrived at this place, he let out a sigh, showing a little emotion. Then he continued to walk. Chapter 12:26. Finally, Dustless said to the black-robed man next to him. To be honest, I was just an ordinary person at that time. Here, I sensed a dark shadow directly attacking a person. Under such circumstances, I acted bravely, but I fell into a dangerous situation. At the critical moment, I entered a mysterious state, a mysterious environment. Therefore, I gained a power. The black-robed man walked while listening to Dustless's narration. At the same time, he carefully observed the surrounding environment to see if there was anything special. In such a situation, he wanted to find the most important thing. Maybe those key things can be confirmed after finding the location of the thing that Dustless mentioned. In that case, he didn't have to look for it anymore. After all, he was now wandering aimlessly in this place. In such a situation, Dustless also sighed, then directly said to the black-robed man next to him, "Can I ask you what exactly happened to you? I can feel that there is a feeling in your body. This feeling is very urgent, urging you to find and do these things. What kind of situation and things have happened to you? What kind of accident has happened to you? What will happen? Is it convenient for you to tell me about it?" Dustless can only try his best to stall for time at this moment and see if he can continue to hear more information from this person. This way it will be convenient for him to speak. If the black-robed man escapes, he can go and check his identity. After all, if some reinforcements arrive at that time, it is very likely that there is no way to do anything to this person. In such a situation, he can only compromise as much as possible and let the black-robed man's identity be exposed. This way he can be caught sooner or later. Dustless felt that the black-robed man in front of him knew the culprit of those monsters. It was because of those monsters that a series of tragic events happened. Therefore, the black-robed man in front of him must not be able to clear his name. The black-robed man glanced at Dustless. After Dustless came here, he seemed to feel that his heart had calmed down a little. Facing such a question, he finally thought about it and slowly opened his mouth. "I know you're inquiring about me, but at this moment I'm actually in the mood to talk about it. Naturally, I'm willing to tell you about it. However, I'm not afraid of what kind of tricks you might play. After all, these aren't particularly big problems for me. Even if I reveal it to you, you can't do anything to me." The black-robed man's arrogance reflected his confidence in his own strength. In the face of such a situation, Dustless couldn't wait. After all, it would be the best situation for him if the black-robed man underestimated him more and more. Therefore, Dustless heard from the black-robed man some things about the examination. Other people were indeed possessed by the devil during cultivation. Then, under such a situation, he began to think of ways to return to his original appearance because he really didn't want to become a monster that was neither human nor ghost. However, such a situation didn't improve at all. The black-robed man tried many methods, but in the end he didn't see any effect. At most, this sentence was effective, but it couldn't cure the root cause at all. In such a situation, it triumphed over other thoughts. He thought of his own people. Now that he had become like this, all he needed to do was to capture more people and conduct more research. Perhaps he would be able to get the final answer. In that case, he might be able to save himself. But he didn't want to waste any more time. Instead, he thought about his own people. He thought about his own people. When Dustless heard this, he felt that everything was as he expected. but in such a situation he seemed to have some doubts. According to the other party's description, although his strength was strong, he couldn't build such a large base by himself. He couldn't do such a big thing. After all, there were still his accomplices. In such a situation, Wu Qin listened carefully. This was what happened later and what kind of unforeseen event happened in the following situations. Then Dustless knew that under such circumstances, the black-robed man suddenly met other people. These people were also very crazy. They also wanted to create something. Although they didn't know what the purpose of creating these things was, the black-robed man felt that since everyone had the same purpose, they should cooperate together. Dustless didn't know what the black-robed man was talking about. Dustless didn't know what the black-robed man was talking about. After hearing this, Dustless was a little surprised. He really didn't know what was going on. Under such a situation, many things became more confusing. It turned out that there were two groups of people. The first group was led by the black-robed man who wanted to do experiments. The other group was more crazy. They seemed to want to create chaos and death. Under such circumstances, they created so many monsters and made more yarn. Nobody knew what they wanted to do. Under such a situation, Dustless thought about all this in his heart. He wondered who the other group of people were. Were they traitors? Or were they people who had never appeared in front of others? If they weren't traitors, then everyone should have more or less known about some special situations and information. They should have already exposed some things that should be exposed. Therefore, it should be those hidden people who didn't often appear in front of others. These hidden people had crazy ideas and then crazily did experiments for their own purposes. Under such circumstances, they hit it off with the black-robed man. In the process, these people also instigated some gods to join their camp. Chapter 12:27. Dustless felt that all of this seemed a little fake, but his rationality told him that all of this was true. Dustless wasn't lying and what he said was all true. In the face of such a situation, Dustless only felt more and more confused and complicated. Even if he could capture this black-robed man, he wouldn't be able to find out who the other group of people were. Dustless reckoned that this black-robed man wouldn't sell out the information of those people. If this was really the case, then it would be a little troublesome. After all, if he couldn't completely eliminate those dangers, then the following situation would be very bad. In the face of such a situation, if those people didn't give up, they would have to find a suitable time to continue to create those monsters. At that time they might become more hidden. They might accumulate a certain number of monsters before revealing them to attack others. When Dustless thought of this possibility, he felt a little scared. Therefore, Dustless knew that if he captured this person in front of him, the final battle might not stop. Facing such a situation, Dustless's heart occasionally had a trace of hesitation and confusion. He was thinking about what to do at this time. He felt a little helpless now. Originally, he thought that he had seen everything, but he didn't expect that what he saw was only a part of it. He hadn't seen the more comprehensive part yet. In such a situation, Dustless also felt a little helpless, but Dustless would never give up because of these things. Even if there was still a hidden group of people, Dustless wouldn't give up so easily. He was determined to find those people and eliminate them. Under such circumstances, Wu Qin said to the person in front of him, "I want to know if you are a god or not. Do you have a temple of your own or not? If you do, then how did you hide it from everyone? Could it be that in such a situation, you will continue to divide yourself into two?" Facing such a situation and such a question, the black-robed man was contemplating whether he should continue to hide the truth instead of telling everything to the person in front of him. After all, he wasn't sure if it was a good thing for him to reveal everything under such circumstances. Dustless knew that the black-robed man had fallen into hesitation under such a situation. But now that it was a critical moment, if he could find out more information, then he might be able to solve the mystery. If that was the case, he might be able to unravel more of the mystery. Originally, these things would have been presented to him very well. In such a situation, Dustless said to the black-robed man in front of him, "What are you still hesitating about? After all, I am now firmly in your hands, right? If you don't find anything in this place, you'll kill me, won't you? In such a situation, what is there to be afraid of? I'm on your side now." Dustless's persuasion directly touched the black-robed man's heart. Facing such a situation, the black-robed man finally said to Dustless after hesitating for a moment, "It seems that you do seem to be very interested in my affairs. Then I'll tell you directly. Under such circumstances, I am indeed a god. It's true that I made some mistakes in my own strength and strayed down the wrong path. That's why I covered myself so tightly and found other ways to save myself." After hearing such an answer, Dustless finally sighed. It seemed that he really didn't understand why such a problem would appear. Originally, a god was high above, solving the problems here every day, dealing with demons and ghosts, and then harvesting the power of faith to obtain immortality. In this case it was really a good thing. But in such a situation, why would there be a problem directly? Previously he met a god. Because there was a problem with his artifact, it caused him to suffer a backlash. Then in such a situation, what kind of problem did this person have? Was it because his artifact was contaminated with demonic energy? Or was it because he was sick? Or was it because he accidentally went astray? Then he directly infected his artifact. That was why something happened to him in such a situation. In fact, as a powerful god, under certain circumstances, if he wanted to decisively make these steps, he should be able to do it. But why didn't he do it? Facing these questions, Dustless hesitated for a while. He didn't know whether to ask this question or not. After all, this matter felt like a private matter in the heart of the person. If he asked this question, then he didn't know if he could get an answer. Anyway, he already knew the identity of the black-robed man. He was now sure that the black-robed man was a powerful god. If he could escape from this place and be rescued, then the black-robed man in front of him would run away, then after some investigation he would be able to find out the true identity of the black-robed man. At that time, this black-robed person would really not be able to escape. His purpose would have been achieved. Then, was there a need for him to explore the scars in the depths of his heart? After all, the reason why he became like this came from those things. If he directly asked him in such a situation, it would be equivalent to sprinkling salt on his wound. Although the black-robed person did a lot of wrong things, he still had his own rights. He was also a god who had done a lot of good things. You're tuning into the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.